Chapter 20. The weather in Harbor City was very good today. The sun shuttled between the high-rise buildings and shed a warm light on this international metropolis. In front of a Western-style small white building, Hu Song-nan was watering the flowers in the yard. This was his son's home. The villa looked small and not luxurious enough. It even had a sense of age. But don't underestimate it. People who can live in a villa in Harbor City where every inch of land is expensive are definitely not ordinary local tycoons. Hu Song-nan came to his son's home and lived there for almost a week, but he didn't go out to see the world. It was mainly because he liked to be quiet and didn't like to be noisy. Playing the piano and taking care of the flowers were the only things he could do. His grandson and granddaughter were very well behaved, but after all, young people also had their own life. Of course, he didn't have much company. "Dad, let's go." A middle-aged man who was nearly 50 years old but well-maintained came out and said respectfully. This was the eldest son of the old man, Hu Yong-seong, the boss of Chenxiong Records, which ranked fourth among the record companies in Harbor City. Although his status was high, he still showed respect in front of his father. "What do you think an old man like me can give you advice?" Hu Song-nan sat in his son's car and said, "I'm not in pop music. I'm afraid I can't play with you young people's things." Hu Yong-seong personally drove for his father. He smiled slightly. "Dad, you have been a teacher for so many years. You have rich experience. You can help me train these musicians in the company. I can't think of anyone more suitable than you for the position of chief music director." In fact, he was also talking nonsense. There were music directors in the record company, but he had never heard of the position of chief music director. It was just set up by Hu Yong-seong for his father. He wanted his father, who was still healthy, to move around more. Otherwise, if he stayed at home all the time, his body would get sick. When they arrived at the company, Hu Song-nan didn't make any comments. He kept a kind smile, greeted the people coming and going, and had a gentle conversation with the company executives called by his son. "Grandpa Hu, you actually know how to speak Cantonese?" Hu Yong-seong's secretary, Yi Xiaofeng, was a young girl. She was the daughter of one of the company's shareholders. She was sent here for training. Her personality was relatively straightforward, and she asked without thinking. For the convenience of everyone's understanding, the following Cantonese dialogue is automatically adjusted to Mandarin. "Yes, when I was young, I also studied in Hong Kong." Hu Song-nan didn't mind. He nodded and responded with a smile. "Xiao Feng, although he's from the mainland, don't underestimate him." Hu Yong-seong was a little dissatisfied. He had always thought that the old man was his lifelong idol, so he tried his best to show off like a child. When he was young, he traveled to Hong Kong, the German Confederation, Win in Austria, and many other places to study and teach. "Before my father was 55 years old, he was invited to perform at WNJSDT almost every 1 or 2 years. Although Hu Yong-seong's musical talent was not high and his attainments were limited, looking at his excited expression, one could tell how deep the old man's influence on him was." "So powerful?" Yi Xiaofeng's eyes seemed to be blooming with little stars. No, these are all empty words. Now that I want to communicate with you young people, I have to talk about pop music. I still have to ask you for advice on this." Hu Song-nan laughed and said humbly. After talking for a while, Hu Yong-seong asked the secretary to accompany his father. He was the boss of a big company, and there were a lot of things for him to deal with. Yi Xiaofeng didn't know how to arrange it, so she took the old man to walk around, introducing the various departments of the company and various interesting places, like a tourist. "This is our recording studio. The 5th and 6th floors are all recording studios. There are a total of 8 rooms. Sometimes they are rented out. Of course, most of the time, they are used by the singers of our company." Although Yi Xiaofeng was not very proficient in the business, she was still a very smart person. She saw Hu Song-nan's rare interested expression, so she slowed down her pace. "Grandpa Hu, how about I check which recording studio is empty and you try it?" Yi Xiaofeng took out her mobile phone and said with a smile. Hu Song-nan was indeed interested. He nodded and said, "Then you ask, but don't ask which one is empty. If it's not disturbing, I want to watch. Hee, how can it be disturbing? Your guidance is their blessing. Yi Xiaofeng said sweetly. She found it quickly. It was the recording studio used by the company's top male singer, Chan Yijie. There was no problem at all. The boss's father wanted to watch. Who dared to say no? Of course, Chan Yijie was also a humble person. He even put down the work at hand and introduced his current situation to Hu Songnan. Recently, I have been preparing for this year's new album. In our industry, it's called collecting songs. Chan Yijie was the most popular male singer under Tianxiang, and he had the ability to write his own songs. At his peak, he could stand shoulder to shoulder with the 4 singing kings of Harbor City. However, singer-songwriters also had an awkward situation. Their status would fluctuate. His songs in the past few years were not as popular as before, and gradually fell behind. This also caused Tianxiang's ranking to slip from the original 3rd to the 4th place. Therefore, Chan Yijie wanted to release a new album this year, and the company decided to help him collect songs. They couldn't release such a completely personal album. The songs that I wrote and the company collected are basically enough to release an album. But I still lack a title song. Chan Yijie smiled bitterly. You see, I'm about to fall asleep here, and I don't have a clue at all. Eason, you're asking too much of yourself. Yi Xiaofeng had a strong background, so she didn't mind and interrupted. Even Sister Guzi said that it's hard to satisfy. Chan Yijie shrugged helplessly. It's good to be strict with yourself. Hu Songnan smiled slightly. Without painstaking effort, how can it be as joyful as the fans when listening to songs? Young man, you should listen to more classical music when you're free. Those masterpieces were made by masters who spent half of their lives or even their whole lives. You're right, but the society now is very fickle. If you don't release an album in a year, I'm afraid that others will catch up with you, and you will have no chance to make a comeback. Chen Yijie sighed. After all, Hu Songnan was old, and he felt tired after standing for a while. He sat down on the sofa and smiled. Originally, I just wanted to see how you youngsters record songs. You don't have to accompany me, it's too much of a hindrance to your work. I'll just quietly listen and watch with Xiaofeng. Chan Yijie didn't put on an act and quickly immersed himself in his work. He really treated Hu Songnan and Yi Xiaofeng as invisible people. Chan Yijie's work was actually very boring. He repeatedly played the music score that he had previously written, carefully considering the structure of the lyrics. From time to time, he would stop to sketch on the paper, and from time to time, he would cross out what he had just written and redo it. Hu Songnan could still accept it because he was familiar with this situation. However, Yi Xiaofeng felt that it was boring. So boring. Grandpa Hu, I'll bring you somewhere else to play. Yi Xiaofeng fidgeted after staying for less than 15 minutes. Hu Songnan waved his hand, indicating that Yi Xiaofeng shouldn't disturb Chan Yijie. He was very focused on listening to Chan Yijie's humming. All right, Yi Xiaofeng helplessly covered her face. Not long after, she became even more restless. It was very boring. If she had this time, she might as well sneak out and discuss with the receptionist on the first floor how to get a new one. This idea, like a weed, grew in Yi Xiaofeng's heart and was very difficult to control. Within a few minutes, her eyes darted around as she thought of sneaking away. But suddenly, Hu Songnan stood up. Are you leaving? Yi Xiaofeng was ecstatic and also stood up. However, Hu Songnan went straight to Chan Yijie. He patted Chan Yijie's shoulder and said with a smile, "Your voice is very recognizable. It's a sad and restrained magnetic voice. Coincidentally, a few days ago, I heard a song that suits you very well. Do you want to give it a try?" Chapter 21. Where did you get the money? Live here. When Murphy came to pick up her daughter, she saw Yang Yi's new address and looked at Yang Yi suspiciously. It was no wonder that Murphy was suspicious. What kind of place did Yang Yi live in before, and what kind of place did he live in now? Not to mention Yang Yi, even Murphy herself was a little jealous. "Mom, Don't scold Papa. Papa said you can live here too. She quickly ran over and hugged her mother's long legs to persuade her. Who is going to live here? Mo Fei was dazed for a second and said, in his previous life, Yang Yi really wouldn't spoil this bad-tempered woman. However, it seemed that after spending a few days with Shi, Yang Yi's edge became less sharp. Looking at Murphy's appearance, he only raised his eyebrows and didn't have the intention to quarrel with her. He lazily took out the lease contract from a drawer and handed it to Murphy. Here, I rented it for 1 yuan. You can say that I'm lucky. I met a good person. How could Murphy believe such a good thing? She frowned and looked at the lease contract again and again, but she couldn't find any problems with it. Finally, Murphy gave up. She reluctantly handed it back, but still asked suspiciously, "Why are you renting such a big house?" The changes Yang Yi had shown her this time were too big, too big. Was this still the honest Yang Yi from before? Was he still the unrepentant and stubborn Shi's father who made her stomp her feet? "I'm opening a coffee shop," Yang Yi said. "Coffee shop? You don't even drink tea and only drink water. You want to open a coffee shop?" Murphy felt her vision go dark. She asked unhappily, "Do you know what coffee is?" Yang Yi was speechless. "Don't look down on people, okay? Do you want me to make you a cup of coffee?" "No, I don't drink instant coffee." Murphy snorted. Yang Yi was too lazy to bicker with her. He turned around and went to the bar. There was a small bar in the restaurant on the second floor. In the past, the old man probably used it to drink wine. People who played classical music were really elegant. But now, Yang Yi temporarily occupied the place and set up his own coffee utensils. At first, Murphy's cold eyes have a look of distrust, but gradually, it was replaced by surprise. Yang Yi used a hand-crank grinder to carefully grind the coffee beans. Throughout the process, his movements were very delicate, not at all like a beginner who was in a hurry. This scene made Mo Fei feel extremely surprised. She could not believe her eyes. How does he know this? And how does he grind it with his hands? Murphy was puzzled. It must be known that most people who like to drink coffee would choose to use a one-stop coffee machine to make coffee. Murphy belonged to this kind of people. She would drink coffee to refresh herself, but she didn't like to play with so many details. Only a true lover would use this kind of retro method to grind beans, right? Because they would enjoy the process. Moreover, it was said that this way of grinding the powder is more uniform and fine, and can make the best coffee taste. But Murphy had tried it before, and with her level, she couldn't taste the difference. Just as Murphy was in a daze, Yang Yi had already brought the coffee in front of Murphy. He gently placed it on the counter in front of Murphy, and then very gentlemanly smiled. "The coffee beans aren't the best, but please try it." With Yang Yi's big body, it was actually very difficult to be associated with the word gentlemanly. But for some reason, Murphy was still teased by Yang Yi, and her heart suddenly beat faster. Murphy was used to being cold, and her expression wouldn't be ugly. But in order to hide the panic in her eyes, she picked up the coffee and took a big sip. Yang Yi saw this scene and was speechless. Who just said that he didn't know coffee? Now that someone was drinking coffee like this, wasn't it like a cow chewing on peonies? After Mo Fei calmed down, she finally felt the aroma of the coffee, as well as the faint bitterness. It was quite tasty. You put sugar in it? Murphy looked at Yang Yi. Yes, you probably can't drink the original taste. Yang Yi said lightly. Of course, he didn't put sugar in his coffee. He really put sugar in it for her. Murphy's heart warmed, but she was even more delighted. How did Yang Yi know her taste? Could it be that he specially researched it for her? However, Yang Yi was not satisfied, and continued to spoil the mood. There is a study that shows that when women drink coffee, they would put an average of 1.5 spoonfuls of sugar. It really makes sense. Suddenly, the warmth in Murphy's heart disappeared without a trace. She clenched her fists, and was almost angered by Yang Yi to the point of gnashing her teeth. Okay, now I believe that you can open a coffee shop. Murphy pursed her red lips, and began to pull out her bag. Your coffee shop, I want to invest, I want half of the shares. What? Yang Yi looked at Murphy in astonishment. What, you don't welcome me to invest? Murphy stared and said. Yang Yi of course didn't want to. He originally opened this coffee shop for the sake of feeling, and never thought of making money. If he invested some money in it, the loss would be counted on him. Of course, there was no rent, so the loss wouldn't be much. But the problem was, why did this woman also want to get involved? Yang Yi had a feeling of his favorite toy being targeted. If it was him in his previous life, Murphy would have already been cut into 8 pieces by him. I don't welcome you. Yang Yi flatly refused. Murphy was almost angered to death by him. She was thinking of ways to give him some money to let him live financially, but in the end, she was bluntly rejected. She unwillingly said, "This is also she's home, why can't I invest a little?" No. Yang Yi's reply was simple and crude. Then where did you get the money to renovate? Where did you get the money for the startup capital? Murphy was about to fight with him, and spoke with a bit of gnashing teeth. I have money. Yang Yi felt that if he continued to speak, it would be a bit difficult to deal with. After all, he really couldn't explain that sum of money. You can give up on this idea. If he knew earlier, he wouldn't have earned this money. Yang Yi secretly sighed in his heart. Why is this woman so troublesome? Why does she keep asking? No, I have to find a way to make money and launder this money. In the future, there's no need to torment like this. It's not difficult to earn money properly. Now, I might have to find an excuse. It's really tiring. Unknowingly, Yang Yi's thinking began to be a little more similar to that of a normal person. However, Murphy was furious with Yang Yi. Her whole person was like a lit explosive barrel, about to explode at any time. Fortunately, at this time, she ran over from the sofa, held her mom's hand, shook it, and said coquettishly, "Mom, don't be angry with Papa, I'll take you to see my room, okay?" She didn't understand what her parents were talking about, but she still felt that the atmosphere was not right. Murphy was finally pulled away by her daughter, and when she looked back, she left a resentful look at Yang Yi. Of course, the big star was still very free and easy, she snorted in her heart. If you don't want to give, then don't give. Why would I care? Damn Yang Yi, close down early, and see if this ant will help you or not. Chapter 22. Huff, huff, huff. Even panting sounds could be heard from afar on the campus green path of Rivertown Media University. A tall and burly figure ran out from the faint mist in the early morning. Black shorts, strong and powerful long legs that moved like windmills. A white singlet accentuated the figure's broad shoulders and round waist. The bulging muscles outlined solid lines, and the skin that was glistening with sweat seemed to emit a strong scent of hormones with every breath. The man exercising in the morning was, of course, Yang Yi. After living here, Yang Yi felt very comfortable. Not only did he have a vast campus for his daily training, but the high-quality air in Tingshan area also allowed his internal cultivation to improve by leaps and bounds. Of course, he wasn't alone on the way to his morning training. Rivertown Media University was one of the top media universities in the country. Many diligent students woke up early every morning. Not many of them exercised, but there were many who practiced their voices, their eloquence, and their musical instruments in every corner of the campus. Although Yang Yi couldn't stand such restrictions, he still cast envious glances at them from time to time. Campus life, a place where one's youth was unrestrained. There was also romantic and pure love. These were all lives that he had never experienced before. Even though he had been reborn, he couldn't experience them. Speaking of which, Yang Yi was still a little depressed. Help! Yang Yi had already run along the campus green path to the depths of Tingshan when suddenly, a cry for help came from afar. He couldn't help but slow down and look in the direction of the sound with a frown. Could it be a melodramatic scene of a hero saving a damsel in distress? How could it be? After a while, Yang Yi saw a nimble little fatty rushing out from the bushes. He was flustered and stumbling as he tried to escape. Then, a dark and swarthy wild boar came out from the bushes behind him. The wild boar wasn't big, only slightly bigger than a dog. but looking at its sharp tusks, it displayed a ferocity that was different from a domesticated pig. Huff! The wild boar's eyes were red as it chased after him relentlessly. The little fatty was about 1.6 meters tall, but he weighed about 160 kilograms. The fat on his stomach jiggled. It was really amazing that he could run so fast even when he was scared witless. Of course, now was not the time to watch a show. Yang Yi shouted and strode forward, passing the little fatty. No. It's dangerous. Fatty was shocked. He wanted to turn around and pull Yang Yi back, but when he turned around and saw this scene, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Yang Yi charged toward the wild boar. Suddenly, he turned his body to the side to avoid the wild boar's charge. Then, using some unknown force, his left leg hooked onto the wild boar's hind leg. Taking advantage of the wild boar's momentum, he lifted it up. This was nothing. After Yang Yi picked up the wild boar, which weighed tens of kilograms, like a football, Yang Yi turned around and smashed his right leg into the wild boar's abdomen in midair. Roar. The wild boar's scream in the air came to an abrupt end. Then, it fell into the grass where it had run out from and stopped moving. Oh my God! Fatty was dumbfounded. But he was really daring. Otherwise, he would not have run up the mountain alone to provoke a wild boar. He suppressed the fear in his heart and went to the grass to look for a while. Finally, he confirmed it. Trembling, he looked at Yang Yi and asked, It's dead. Yang Yi looked at him indifferently and nodded. Don't underestimate Yang Yi, okay? Although he had not recovered half of his strength from his previous life, but a wild boar that was not much bigger than a dog was hit in the abdomen by his inner strength. Its internal organs were all shattered. How could it survive? But, in contrast, he was more curious. In this mountain, how could there be a wild boar? And, how did this little fatty provoke this wild boar? If not for his curiosity, Yang Yi would have left after kicking the wild boar to death. However, the little fatty was more fanatical than him. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. He rushed over and pulled Yang Yi's hand and said sincerely, Hero, please accept me as your disciple. I want to learn martial arts from you. Real martial arts. At that moment, Yang Yi had a bad feeling. Oh no, it seems like I've been entangled by a pervert. Of course, the little fatty was not a pervert, but he was more sticky than candy. Yang Yi used his running speed to get rid of him. As a result, when he went down the mountain, Yang Yi saw this guy again. He was actually waiting at the exit. He even got a bicycle from who knows where and was riding behind him. Master, please accept me as your disciple. I'll do anything for you, the little fatty said while gasping for breath. Really useless. Yang Yi looked down on him. He used his feet to run such a long distance and was still breathing evenly. This little fatty was as tired as a dog from riding a bicycle. Not to mention that Yang Yi never thought of accepting a disciple. Even if he did, he would not be willing to accept a waste. However, the little fatty really persevered. He followed Yang Yi all the way back to the small building. The coffee shop was not yet renovated, so when Yang Yi went up to the second floor from the back, the little fatty still shamelessly followed him. Yang Yi frowned and resisted the urge to throw him out. It has to be said that the little fatty's tenacity made Yang Yi have a good impression of him. This building seems to be Professor Who's. The little fatty who turned into a know-it-all patted his head and asked in surprise, Master, are you Professor Who's son? Originally, Yang Yi did not want to pay attention to him. This guy was a chatterbox. Along the way he kept talking. But now, his guess was so outrageous. Yang Yi turned his head and glared at him. This house, I rented it. Oh. The little fatty was very happy because his master finally spoke to him. Then, he still wanted to continue nagging. Shut up. Yang Yi did not even turn his head and sealed his mouth. The little fatty could only obediently shut up. But he still looked around curiously. The questions in his heart slowly began to be suppressed. You live in such a big house by yourself? Where did Professor Who go? "Master, where did you learn so much kung fu?" But he could not ask. He felt very uncomfortable holding it in. "Have you eaten breakfast?" Yang Yi took off his wet singlet under the little fatty's envious gaze. He wiped the sweat off his body and changed into a dry t-shirt. Then, he walked into the kitchen and asked casually, "Not yet." The little fatty acted as if he was granted amnesty. He excitedly opened his mouth. "Master, you know how to cook?" "No, I mean, you even prepared breakfast yourself?" Yang Yi did not pay attention to him. He minded his own business and fried eggs and ham. He also made a plate of vegetable and fruit salad. One serving for each person. He brought it to the dining room. "Master, you are so amazing. My saliva is about to flow out," the little fatty said with a face full of admiration. Yang Yi smiled. His expression was not as cold as before. He pointed at the plate in front of the little fatty and said, "Eat, don't get cold." After integrating into his new identity, Yang Yi had been reflecting. Was he still as isolated as he was in his previous life? If he did not even have a friend, then what was the point of being reborn? Now that he had met a thick-skinned little fatty, Yang Yi suddenly thought that it was not a bad choice to meet some strangers and make some friends. P.S. It seems that there are readers in Genesis who said that they can't review. I don't know what's going on with Little Han. Little Han has never deleted anyone's review. Could it be that the system deleted it? Chapter 23. Learning martial arts was out of the question. After Yang Yi brought up some training conditions, the little fatty backed off. How could he withstand such a tough training? No horse stance, no running, no dieting. Can I still practice some simple martial arts? The little fatty asked in the end, unwilling to give up. No. Yang Yi shook his head. Okay. The little fatty lowered his head dejectedly. However, without this layer of request, the little fatty continued to display his talkative nature, and the two of them quickly became familiar with each other. The little fatty's name was Guazi, and he was a genius youth. Of course, this was what he thought was extraordinary and patted his chest to admit. However, at the age of 16, he had skipped grades to the third year of high school, and his grades were the best in the entire school. His IQ was definitely not low. However, Yang Yi felt that whether this guy was a genius or not was still undetermined. He was definitely a clown. A straight-A little fatty felt that the challenge of the college entrance exam was too low, so he changed his goal and signed up for Jiang Chuan's arts exam this month. "I want to be a big star," Guazi said childishly. Yang Yi could not deny it, but he was very interested. He wanted to know how angry this guy's parents and teachers were when he made this decision. "My parents don't care about me, but my teachers are worried to death." Guazi laughed. "But I don't want to go to Beijing University or Tsing-Nan University. I don't want to create results for them. Jiang Chuan is so good. There are so many beauties." Yang Yi was speechless. He was only 16, and he was already so eager. Speaking of which, this guy was using the opportunity of coming over to prepare for the exam to walk around the school all day. Otherwise, he would not have run to Ting Mountain early in the morning to play and be chased by wild boars. "You suddenly came over to take the arts exam. Can you pass?" Yang Yi expressed his doubts. Guazi patted his chubby chest and said unhappily, "Brother Yang, how can you doubt me like this? After all, I've been learning vocal music since I was a child." Yang Yi took the guitar that the old man had given him from the wall and handed it to Guazi. "Perform a song that you're good at. Let me hear it." "Wow, big brother Yang, you have such a good guitar?" Brown under B. Guazi knew what was good for him, so he made a fuss about it. After receiving it, he fondled it lovingly. Yang Yi didn't explain. He just raised his hand and let Guazi start his performance. After picking up the guitar, Guazi's expression became serious. He gently strummed the guitar, thought for a moment, and said, "Then brother Yang, I'll sing you a song that I like very much. It's Chow Fong's Small Town in the South. P.S. This song exists in reality. For the time being, it's categorized in this world. If you're interested, you can search for it. It's a slow jazz ballad. It's suitable for lazy afternoons. Yang Yi didn't know much about this world's music. A while ago, he was busy renovating the coffee shop. He didn't have time to install a high-end sound system at home. When he had the chance, he wanted to taste this world's music feast. The guitar strings were gently pulled, and a very, very slow prelude flowed out. Yang Yi couldn't help but close his eyes. This melody was very simple, but it gave people a rare peace of mind. He quickly judged that this song should be a ballad. The same melody was only repeated a few times. Guazi softly hummed. Small town in the south, there's no radiance. Yang Yi's eyebrows slightly raised. He glanced at Guazi and was a little surprised. This kid didn't exaggerate. He did have a very good vocal foundation. But Yang Yi was more surprised by his voice. In his previous life, Yang Yi felt that in the music industry, every fat person had potential. For example, Han Hong, Sun Nan, Lu Huan, and overseas Adele. Although these people were fat, they had a unique voice. They could sing very high-key songs. They could also sing across many vocal ranges. Guazi, this little fatty, was obviously the same. Although the song he sang wasn't very high-key, it should be a female song. To use this kind of rhythm and sing a slightly high key, Yang Yi admitted that he couldn't do it. But Guazi sang very easily. Every time I come back here, I feel calm. The sun is blazing, people walk slowly. He was indeed a 16-year-old boy. His voice was clear and without any impurities. The boy sang with the same pleasant voice. The scattered straw hat, the flowers I planted. Finally, with this line, Guazi sang with his extraordinary singing skills. The word sun transitioned from the word flower to the word flower. The intonation changed a few times, vividly displaying the languid spirit of the song. Shake, 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 shake. I sing this song by myself here, and people just smile, oh, smile. I'm singing this song alone here. You won't know, oh, I know. Yang Yi really closed his eyes and listened to the song quietly. The song was actually ordinary, but it was pure and simple. People who liked slow ballads would like it, but there were very few of them. It was not easy to become popular in the market. However, Guazi's singing was not bad. Whether it was his voice or his singing skills, Yang Yi felt that he was much better than some of the singers in the Chinese music industry in his previous life. However, after putting down the guitar, this guy's funny nature was revealed again. With a face full of expectation he asked, "Hee, Brother Yang, what do you think of my singing?" Looking at his expression, it was almost the same as Shi, who was eagerly waiting for her father's praise. You're going to take the music exam. There shouldn't be a problem." Yang Yi said lightly. Ah. Guazi was very surprised. He scratched his head and said, "But I'm going to take the acting exam." Yang Yi could not bear it any more. He took off his slipper and threw it at him. "You're taking the acting exam, why are you telling me you're going to take the vocal exam?" Guazi covered his head and scurried away. The acting exam also tests one's specialty. If I were to take the exam that I know, it would be boring. I'm wrong. Brother Yang, please don't hit me. This joker, it was fine if he was joking, but his skin was as thick as a city wall. He hung around Yang Yi's place for a day. After being fed 2 meals by Yang Yi, he actually had the cheek to ask to stay the night. "Brother Yang, your house is so big and so luxurious. Even if it's empty, it's still empty. Why don't I check out of my hotel and stay here?" When Yang Yi's cold eyes looked over, he quickly put up a defensive posture. He was afraid that Yang Yi would not be able to hold back and beat him again. "I'm only staying for a few days. After the art exam, I still have to go back to school. I'll pay rent, a lot of rent." Guazi smiled fawningly. This guy. Yang Yi actually knew that Guazi's family was not ordinary. He could see that the clothes he wore and the watch he wore were not high-end products that an ordinary family could afford. Moreover, When Guazi was holding the guitar, although he was surprised, he did not show much concern. This meant that he had used it before, and even used a better one. Guazi wanted to come over for a free meal, but Yang Yi rejected it in his heart. But he suddenly remembered that he still needed a helper for his renovation work. You can come over and stay for a few days. It's not impossible. Yang Yi looked at Guazi with bad intentions and said, I won't charge you rent, but you have to do me a favor. Guazi was overjoyed. He patted his chest and agreed. No problem, Brother Yang. I, Guazi, have 100 pounds of meat. I'll be at your disposal. Hee, I hope you can still smile tomorrow. Chapter 24. Help. Little Fatty was crying and screaming again, but this time, no one came to save him. After a while, he stopped his fake crying. He shook his head and sighed. He bent down and hugged the heavy sofa. No, it should be said that he dragged the heavy single-seater sofa into the shop while gasping for breath. Yang Yi walked past Guazi, ignoring his pitiful eyes. Then, Yang Yi moved a bigger sofa, and walked in as if he was flying. After putting down the sofa, Yang Yi lightly kicked the little fatty who was paralyzed like a dead pig. Get up, if you don't work, you won't have lunch. Yang Yi used the thing that Guazi cared about the most to threaten him. Guazi quickly jumped up, muttered and followed Yang Yi outside, and continued to move. Brother Yang, I'm about to take an exam, how can you bear to let me work instead of studying? His nagging was like a bug that drilled into the ear, making people uncomfortable. Yang Yi didn't even look at him, and coldly threw out a sentence. Aren't you a genius? Do you still need to study? Yes. I need to study, I need to practice acting. Guazi nodded his head like a chicken pecking rice. Hee, do you think I'll believe you? Yesterday, this guy moved here, and played for a whole day. Yang Yi didn't believe that this little fatty who likes to stroll around looking at beautiful sisters would have the mood to study. Ahem. Hello. May I ask which one of you is Mr. Yang Yi? Outside the door, a voice with a slight accent interrupted Guazi's thoughts of struggling. But Guazi was overjoyed. He took the initiative to put down the work in his hand, and went to greet the person. He, my brother, he is Yang Yi. Hello, welcome. Yang Yi also turned his head to look, and saw a man of medium height standing at the door, dressed very well. Even at noon, he was still wearing a mask and a hat, but he didn't feel bored. But, it seemed that Murphy also liked this? Yang Yi couldn't help but think of the bad-tempered woman who had a good figure. Achoo! In a dance studio, Murphy, who was rehearsing the dance in the MV with the choreography teacher, inexplicably sneezed. This made Mo Xiaowan worried for a while. Back to the coffee shop, Guazi, who enthusiastically ran to greet the customer, was the first to find that something was wrong. He was surprised, pointed at the person, and said in a trembling voice, You, aren't you Isan, Chan Ijie? The person was Chan Ijie. In order to show his sincerity, he turned down a job and rushed over from Harbor City to find Yang Yi. After being recognized, Chan Ijie generously took off his hat and mask, and nodded at Guazi with a smile. Hello. Who was Chan Ijie? Yang Yi was still confused. But Guazi was already trembling with excitement. He tightly grasped Chan Ijie's hand and shouted, Isan, I'm your loyal fan. You must give me an autograph. Sure. Chan Ijie was a little scared by this guy's enthusiasm. Of course, there were more fanatical fans before, but that was under the protection of assistants and security. He smiled a little awkwardly. Yang Yi's mouth twitched a little. He didn't have the heart to expose Guazi, this thick-skinned guy. He didn't know who it was, but yesterday he swore that he was Chow Fong's loyal fan. Yang Yi helped Chan Ijie out, and then invited him upstairs to talk. As for Guazi, of course, he eagerly followed. Finally, he could be exempted from labor. He almost ran in front. When Yang Yi made coffee for them, Chan Ijie explained the purpose of their visit. Yang Yi just listened indifferently, but Guazi took the initiative to talk. Oh, so it's Professor Hu who introduced you. Professor Hu's son is your boss? So powerful? My brother can write songs? Is it true? Guazi excitedly picked up Chen Yijie's phone and asked him to play the song for him. Yang Yi concentrated on making coffee, listening to the song but didn't say anything. I came to your city. Accompanied by the guitar accompaniment and the faint noise, Yang Yi's voice finally came out. Although it was a little distorted, it was indeed Yang Yi's voice. Guazi looked at Chen Yijie in a daze. Chen Yijie understood what he meant and said with a wry smile, "This is the sound source downloaded from the Copyright Association. It's not damaged." Not to mention Guazi, when he was in Harbor City, he listened to it with Grandpa who and had a toothache. But there was no other way. This song was so good. Just like gold mixed in sand would be different. After listening to the song, Chen Yijie decided to visit Yang Yi in person. Of course, when he saw Yang Yi in person, Chen Yijie finally understood why Grandpa who held back his laughter and told him not to be surprised when he saw Yang Yi. Because Yang Yi's figure didn't look like a songwriter at all, but more like a brick-moving worker. Just now, Yang Yi was moving things. However, after coming up to the second floor, Yang Yi's indifferent expression and the elegance between his gestures made Chen Yijie change his view of him greatly. Guazi finally finished listening to the song. Finally, he couldn't hold it anymore and asked in a loud voice, "Brother, when you recorded this song, did you record it with your mobile phone?" Yang Yi came over with a cup of coffee and asked calmly, "Yes, what's wrong?" Was there a problem? Yang Yi didn't think there was a problem at all. He couldn't find a recording studio in the village in the city before, so he simply recorded a sound source with the high-end smartphone that Murphy gave him and found an internet cafe to upload. My boss. Guazi, the genius young man, actually said a sentence in Cantonese, "You are too wasteful. Such a good song was recorded by you into noise, do you know? Unforgivable." Yang Yi ignored him and just motioned for Chen Yijie to drink the coffee. Chen Yijie picked up the cup and took a sip. He was also a person who often drank coffee, so he immediately had a different feeling when he drank it. Yongsheng's coffee is good. No wonder he opened a coffee shop. My brother is better at cooking. Guazi interrupted. After chatting for a while, Chen Yijie finally said his intention. He wanted to buy Yang Yi's song and make it the title song of his new album. Guazi excitedly shouted, "Really? Eason, are you going to release a new album? When will it be released? You actually want to use my brother's song for your new album? Wow, I'm rich." A series of questions made Chen Yijie confused. Fortunately, Yang Yi slapped Guazi's fat face away and said, "I'm sorry, just ignore him." They still had to talk about business. It was Yang Yi's first time selling a song. He asked curiously, "Eason, how much are you going to pay for my song? I don't know much about the market." He didn't do business in his previous life. Now that the negotiation started, Yang Yi foolishly exposed his weakness. Guazi, on the other hand, was anxious for him. He pulled Yang Yi to the side and complained in a low voice, "Brother, that's not how you talk. Moreover, if you don't know the market, you can ask me." "I know." Chapter 25. The two of them whispered to each other for a while. Finally, Guazizwil proudly tidied his hair and walked over in high spirits. "Hello, Eason. Let's get to know each other again. Now I'm my brother's temporary agent and will be fully responsible for the negotiation of this song," Guazi said with a smile. Chen Yijie was stunned for a moment. He also reached out his hand and shook hands with Guazi. The atmosphere suddenly became formal. Of course, it looked very funny. Yang Yi, a 30-year-old uncle, sat behind without saying a word. Instead, he let a little fat man stand up for him. The big star Chen Yijie also didn't put on any airs. This scene was too incongruous. "Actually, I don't know much about the market in the mainland." Chen Yijie took out a contract and looked at Yang Yi and Guazi. He said sincerely, "Before coming, my agent prepared this contract." Guazi took it and flipped through it. In fact, he hadn't come into contact with this type of contract. It was just that this kid was talented and intelligent and quickly found the key points. You want to buy my brother's song for 50,000 yuan? Isn't it too cheap? Guazi curled his lips and said, Eason, don't think that I don't know the industry. At the beginning of the year, the Hong Kong media also exposed that Lu Tianwang gave teacher Lin Chi-ching, who wrote the song for him, a 1,000,000 yuan writing fee, not to mention the copyright fee in the contract. Chen Yijie was a little stunned. There's no comparison. Teacher Lin is the #1 genius in Hong Kong. He has written many classic works. But Mr. Yang, with all due respect, we have already offered a very high price for a newcomer. But my brother is not an ordinary newcomer. Guazi smiled slyly and said, Eason, don't you have a high evaluation of this song? Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to Zhongqing in person, right? Chen Yijie actually didn't know much about negotiations. Usually, his agent handled it. But this time, he came in a hurry and his agent had to stay behind to deal with the mess he left behind. So, Chen Yijie went into battle alone. Yes, I really like Mr. Yang's song. Chen Yijie said sincerely, whether it's Hong Kong or the mainland, there are very strict rules. The highest copyright fee I can get is 80,000 yuan, and it's impossible for me to get more. He was also afraid that Yang Yi would be disgusted, so he took the initiative to say, of course, if Mr. Yang's song has good results, the amount will be much higher if you cooperate with us next time. Because Mr. Yang, you were no longer a newcomer at that time. Then why don't you ask my brother to write you a song that's not as good, and save this song for next time? Guazi smiled and said, you can use my brother's song as the title track. It's so heartbreaking to sell it cheaply. Chen Yijie was helpless. He felt that the little fatty in front of him was too cunning. His straightforward personality made it difficult for him to deal with him. He said, then what do you think we should do? Guazi glanced at Yang Yi, and Yang Yi nodded slightly at him. The two of them had discussed before, and Yang Yi did not intend to give any harsh conditions. After all, it was Old Master who recommended him. He owed Old Master a big favor, and it was not Yang Yi's style to ask for too much. Guazi understood. He coughed twice and said, Eason, you have your difficulties, I can understand. How about this? Let's change the condition and increase the percentage of the share. How to increase it? Guazi patted his chest and said boldly, Eason, we won't take advantage of you. If this song can't help you get a platinum album, our share will be calculated as 8% of the original contract. The income from copyrights in this world was very high, and it was reflected in the share of sales. The record company still had the biggest share, but it was not as scary as in Yang Yi's previous world. The record company could get at most 40% of the share, and the record store or other channels could get 15 to 20%. The remaining 40% was divided by the singer, the songwriter, the producer, and the Copyright Association. The Copyright Association's share was very high, reaching 2%. But it was also because of this that they had enough financial resources to maintain the operation of this huge organization so that the creators could get the rewards they deserved. The share of the songwriters was not fixed, and it depended on the negotiations between the creators and the record company. However, 8% was indeed the standard for a newcomer. After all, the songwriters each got 4%, which was relatively rare in the mainland. Of course, this 8% was based on the number of songs in the album, plus the performance of Yang Yi's song, and through a complicated weighting algorithm, it could accurately calculate the share of income that Yang Yi deserved. As far as I know, Eason hasn't released a platinum album for 3 years, right? Guazi hit the nail on the head. Chen Yijie nodded silently. He did not deny that he was eager to return to the top. If your album can get a platinum album, we ask for a share of 16%. Guazi said surprisingly, this has to be written in the contract. 16%? Chen Yijie was shocked. That's too much. Even the A-list songwriters can't get such a share. 16% was indeed high. As a singer, Chen Yijie could only get 15 to 20%, and 20% of the share was when he was at the peak of Hong Kong's music industry. Eason, we're talking about after the results are out. If my brother's song can help you sell a platinum album, do you think this share is not worth it? Guazi said with a smile, if it's not platinum, we'll be at a loss with an 8% share. Chen Yijie smiled bitterly. He felt that in the negotiation with Guazi, he was completely at a disadvantage. Guazi had firmly grasped his eagerness to prove himself. I need to make a phone call and discuss with the company. Chen Yijie stood up and said blankly. After Chen Yijie walked away, Guazi breathed a long sigh of relief, and his serious expression became sloppy again. My God, I was so nervous. Yang Yi patted him on the shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. Big brother Yang, since I'm working so hard, does that mean I don't have to work anymore? Guazi grinned sheepishly. Yang Yi narrowed his eyes and smiled. No. No way. Guazi threw himself on the sofa and wailed. Boss, I didn't do anything, but I worked hard. A smile appeared at the corner of Yang Yi's mouth. He said, You're working hard, but since you're working so hard, I'll cook you a French feast today. This was the biggest encouragement. Guazi got up again in surprise. Really? Then I want medium well fried steak, fried goose liver, baked snails. Yang Yi rolled his eyes and said, There's no foie gras or snails. You'll eat whatever I make. Goose liver, snails. Yang Yi wanted to eat it himself. However, in Jiang City, he hadn't figured out where to buy such top ingredients. Chapter 26. In the end, Tian Xiang agreed to increase the share of the platinum album to 14%. On this basis, the share of the single album would be weighted any higher and they would not relent, because they had to take Chen Yijie into consideration. Chen Yijie had already taken the initiative to lower his share to 15%. They couldn't let an A-list singer suffer, right? Although little Fatty Gua was still unsatisfied, Yang Yi didn't let him continue to pester him. He made the decision to sign the revised contract. He didn't use his real name. Yang Yi, who was used to using a fake name, gave himself a stage name. Mu Xiang, in fact, was a homonym of Liang, Leon. It was also a remembrance of his previous life. After the contract was signed, Chen Yijie, the famous singer, was finally relieved. He didn't stay for long, and excitedly held the piano score that Yang Yi had rearranged for him. This song was more suitable for piano accompaniment, and he was rushing back to Hong Kong to test it out. Big loss, big loss. Guazi kept murmuring, This is a gambling agreement, and it may not succeed. If we don't have a platinum album, we will have nothing to eat. It seemed that Guazi cared more than Yang Yi himself. Don't forget your roots. Yang Yi simply explained to Guazi, What's more, the other party has also expressed their sincerity. We don't need to take all the advantages. Yang Yi had experienced this in his previous life. Once, he was carrying out an assassination mission in Iraq. During the mission, he was discovered by a civilian child. He couldn't be ruthless enough to get rid of the threat, so he let the child go. 2 days later, when he completed the mission and retreated, he was attacked by a mysterious armed force. The other party even used a rocket launcher. He was seriously injured and almost fell into a desperate situation. However, he would never have thought that the child whom he had helped before would magically appear and take him to a tunnel to escape. After this incident, he not only understood the truth, but also felt the warmth of human kindness. Gradually, he was no longer used to the identity of an assassin, so he escaped from the organization. However, the logic was the same. One should not be too greedy. Leaving some room for others would also facilitate future cooperation. Yang Yi's casual words gave Guazi a great shock, especially the sentence that had never appeared in this world before, Don't go too far, and we'll meet again in the future. It was like a proverb, making Guazi unable to help but think about it for a long time. He felt that he couldn't understand this big brother of his anymore. Thinking back, the first impression that Yang Yi gave to Guazi was that he was a fierce man. A super strong man who could kick a wild boar to death with a single kick. This was a very deep impression. After all, Yang Yi's appearance was there, and Guazi couldn't help but be in awe. Then, Guazi shamelessly came here. His impression of Yang Yi had changed a little. A chef who could make top-notch delicacies. Fortunately, Yang Yi didn't know that this guy thought of him as a chef with a thick neck and a big head. If he knew, he would definitely cut him up. But now, Yang Yi had once again subverted Guazi's understanding. This big guy, not only could he write songs, but he could also speak such profound principles. He had become a mixture of a fierce man, a chef, an artist, and a life mentor. What the hell, no matter how you look at it, it's unbelievable. Guazi held it in for an entire day, until the evening. He couldn't help but ask, "Big brother Yang, what kind of person are you?" Yang Yi frowned, hiding the killing intent in his heart. He asked, "Why do you ask?" This question was very dangerous. Could it be that he saw something? Yang Yi had only enjoyed a few days of peace, and he didn't want it to be taken away from him. If someone jumped out, Yang Yi would mercilessly let him die without a burial ground. Guazi didn't feel that something was wrong. He looked curious and said excitedly, "Because you're very mysterious. Your kung fu is so powerful, and you can even write songs. Yesterday you actually hid such a good song, but you weren't willing to play it for me." This guy, when he expressed his curiosity, he could talk non-stop for a while, and then he didn't know where the topic went. Yang Yi quietly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, things didn't develop in a bad direction. Otherwise, he might have to think about whether to be ruthless to this little fatty or not. Although he was very noisy, Yang Yi's impression of this little fatty was not bad. He admired talented people with their own personality. "So, I'm very curious, what kind of person were you in the past?" Guazi finally turned the topic back, but immediately he couldn't help but say, "For example, I was smart since I was young, and learned everything quickly. When I was 5 years old, my family hired a tutor for me to learn piano." Yang Yi helplessly dug his ears. Well, at this time, he could organize his words and study how to lie. Finally, Guazi's mouth was dry as he drank a large glass of water. He blinked his clever round eyes and puzzledly said, "Brother Yang, why aren't you saying anything? Are you not willing to talk about it?" "That's okay, everyone has their own past that they don't want to talk about." "What the hell? Who said he wasn't willing?" It was obvious that he couldn't get a word in. Yang Yi couldn't help but roll his eyes. He was too lazy to argue. He just said lightly, "I used to be a soldier." "Oh, I know." Guazi immediately interrupted. He said excitedly, "Your kung fu is excellent. You must be the legendary Special Forces soldier, the king of soldiers, riding 1,000 miles alone, and taking the head of the general in the midst of thousands of soldiers." Seeing Yang Yi's glare, Guazi laughed dryly and said, "Brother Yang, go on, go on. After I retired, I worked in all kinds of industries. Entertainment, hotels, bars, nightclubs." Yang Yi didn't care and simply introduced his experience over the years. "I understand now." Guazi couldn't hold it in anymore. He slapped his thigh and said with a look of worship, "Big brother Yang, it's because you've endured humiliation all these years that you've secretly learned so many powerful skills and have your current achievements." Yang Yi really wanted to lie like this, but he wasn't sure if others would buy it. However, now Guazi imagined it himself. Yang Yi was happy to see this. He saved the trouble of explaining. "And that's true." Yang Yi nodded calmly. "Brother Yang, you're amazing. You're my idol. Please accept my worship." Guazi knelt on the sofa in worship and really kowtowed. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He remembered the scene of this guy recognizing idols everywhere. Guazi eagerly ran over, took the guitar and respectfully handed it to Yang Yi. "Brother Yang, sing Long Time No See for me again. Today's poor sound quality, I can't tell if this song is good or bad." Yang Yi held the guitar and was in a daze for a while. He suddenly said, "I'll sing you another song I wrote. Didn't you ask me what I was like before? I think through this song, you may be able to find the answer." "Okay." Guazi sat down with a look of expectation and prepared to listen. Without any prelude, Yang Yi casually plucked the guitar strings and directly began to sing. "I once dreamed of traveling the world with a sword, to see the prosperity of the world." Yang Yi's low voice, with the vicissitudes of life, the first line of lyrics, made Guazi's scalp tingle. The young heart is always a little frivolous, now you're all over the world. The little fatty couldn't understand the confusion of drifting in a foreign land and the desire to pursue one's dream, but he faintly felt his heart tremble violently from the stimulation of this song. It was like shouting on the rooftop, like watching the cars coming and going on the overpass, like thinking about the distance on the train. Before he finished listening, the little fatty was already intoxicated by the melody and the lyrics. Chapter 27. While Yang Yi was singing, Murphy finally finished her 2 days of work and dragged her tired body back home. As soon as she opened the door, she sensed it. She happily broke free from the nanny's embrace and ran over. "Mom, she missed you so much." The little girl was wearing cute pajamas and holding a teddy bear in her left hand. She was extremely cute. Mom also missed She. Murphy picked up She and was intimately kissed by her daughter on the cheek. Her cold and elegant face finally showed a trace of a smile, and the tiredness on her face seemed to dissipate a little. She, have you had dinner? Have you been obedient at home?" Murphy asked softly. She nodded vigorously and said in a sweet voice, "Yes, she also washed clean." "Mom, smell it. Does it smell good?" The little girl also stretched out her little arm, and her wrist was as white as the moon. Her skin was smooth and tender. Murphy gave a rare mischievous smile, avoided the little arm, and put her head into She's neck. She took a deep breath, and then said seriously, "Yes, it smells good." She shrank her little head and giggled. No, it tickles." "Miss Amo, have you eaten? Shall I heat up the food for you?" The nanny watched the mother and daughter being intimate for a while, and then came over and asked with concern. "Aunt Ju, there's no need. I've already eaten on the plane." Mo Fei smiled slightly and said, "You can go and rest first. I'll take care of Cici." The nanny, Aunt Ju, was an Aunt Mo Shaowan hired in her hometown. She was honest, and would not leak secrets. Murphy was relieved. But even so, every time Murphy went out to participate in an activity, she would feel uneasy. She was always afraid that she would not be safe at home. Especially when she was on a business trip for 2 days, she would still be awakened by nightmares in the middle of the night after talking to her daughter on the phone. Of course, she was happy to be back, but Murphy knew that unless she gave up her career as a singer, she would have to fly around and not be home more and more often. At night, Murphy changed into silk pajamas and lazily lay on the bed. She leaned on her left forearm to support her cheek, and watched She play with her dolls at the bedside. The silk-like silk pajamas were very light and thin. It went down along Mo Fei's waist and up on her perky buttocks, showing the original charm of her curves without any cover. The most beautiful part was her pair of upturned feet. They were as clean as snow and as smooth as jade. It was a pity that there was no bright nail polish. Mo Fei did not have the time to apply it. Otherwise, it would give people a strong visual impact. Of course, this beauty could not be appreciated by any man. As for Mo Fei, she would only let herself go when she was alone. Usually, she was still a very conservative person. Now Murphy's expression was slightly depressed. Although she was watching her daughter play, she was actually thinking about something. She still had to work, otherwise she would not have made up her mind to come back. She would have to face a lot of competition. But what about She? Murphy knew that she would be busier and busier in the future. She could not always leave She at home, could she? How about I send She to her father? As soon as this idea came up, Murphy was shocked by herself. How could she? No matter who he entrusted to take care of his daughter, he couldn't entrust his daughter to Yang Yi. For 4 years, She was a piece of flesh in Murphy's heart. If she handed her daughter to Yang Yi, Murphy felt as if the flesh in her heart was cut off. Occasionally, when she went to her father's house for the weekend, she was so happy that she did not want to come back. If she stayed at her father's house for a long time, would the little girl still remember that she had a mother? Murphy was very jealous when she thought about it. Let Underhand go, can't hold under anymore. Cece was playing with the two dolls. One was a doll in the shape of a girl, and the other was a pig. She hummed and walked around as if she was playing house. Murphy was very busy recently. She rarely paid attention to what song her daughter was humming. But this time, she finally understood that the little girl was humming from time to time. Not only was she singing English songs, but she was humming with a very good melody. She, what are you singing? Murphy put aside the distracting thoughts and asked curiously. I'm singing. She tilted her head and thought carefully. She realized that her father did not mention the name of the song, so she had to say, I'm singing Sister Aisha's song. Sister Aisha? Murphy was stunned. She subconsciously thought that Aisha was a foreign female singer. Where did you learn it? Murphy was a little puzzled. Even if she had stayed abroad when she was 1 or 2 years old, Murphy did not think that she could sing English songs alone. After all, she insisted on Chinese education at home. But now, she was singing with perfect pronunciation. This was not something that could be achieved easily. Papa taught me. She said with admiration. Papa told she the story of Anna and Aisha. He also taught she how to sing. If it was said that Yang Yi would tell his daughter stories, Murphy would still believe it. After all, this man still loved his daughter very much. But Yang Yi taught she how to sing English songs? Murphy felt that her understanding of the world was a little subverted. What the hell? This guy can speak English? In Murphy's impression, Yang Yi was a soldier who did not read many books, and that was the truth. Of course, this was not because she disliked him. It was just because of this reason that they could not find common topics in the past, and the estrangement between them became deeper and deeper. He must have fed her some kind of bewitching medicine. Murphy snorted discontentedly in her heart. It's time to sleep. Mommy will read a story to you, okay? Murphy sat at the head of the bed, took a children's picture book from the bedside cabinet, and patted the space beside her. She would usually tell she stories, but usually before she went to bed, she would come over with a storybook and ask her to tell her stories. The reason why Mo Fei took the initiative today was because she felt uncomfortable in her heart. Who said that only you can tell stories to your daughter? Humph, I can do it too. She happily agreed. She twisted her little butt, climbed over, and leaned softly in her mother's arms. In the forest, there is a little white rabbit. Murphy's voice was no longer cold when she was with her daughter. Instead, it was as gentle as water, like Teresa Teng. This was probably an ice goddess that no one had ever seen before. Under her mother's gentle coaxing, she gradually fell asleep. Murphy hugged her daughter and let her sleep on her little pillow. Then, she lifted her daughter's hair and gently kissed the little girl's little face. Sigh. She let out a long sigh. Murphy also turned off the lights and laid down. Her tired face did not reveal any sleepiness, and her beautiful eyes were a little dazed. The thought that had appeared earlier came to her mind again. Chapter 28. P.S. Many readers feel that this plot is extremely toxic. Xiaohan reflects deeply. It is recommended to skip chapters 30 to 33 and directly consume chapter 34. Brother Yang, I have a business plan for you. Our shop can wait for the release of Eason's album and open for business. With this, we can become famous overnight. At noon, Guazi was very excited after eating the egg with abalone sauce and sea cucumber. He pulled out the small blackboard and wanted to teach Yang Yi a lesson. No. Yang Yi simply refused, blocking the little fatty's words. Guazi was stunned for a moment and excitedly jumped up and down. Why? If everyone knows that you are the songwriter of Eason's new album, they will definitely flock here. Then, our coffee shop will definitely be popular. Yang Yi mercilessly corrected him. First of all, this is my coffee shop. Second of all, why would I want the business to be popular? Yang Yi shrugged and said, there are too many customers, I can't handle it. I might as well not open this coffee shop. Gua Zi was speechless for a while. He found that although what Yang Yi said was not within his scope of knowledge, he could not find a reason to refute. Then, are we still decorating in the afternoon? Gua Zi thought of hammering nails and sawing boards in that hot environment and felt a bit of a headache. Ahem, Brother Yang, I have something to do in the afternoon. I have to go to school to hand in some materials. Looking at the way his eyes were rolling around, Yang Yi knew that this guy was going to slack off again. No decorating in the afternoon. If you want to play, then go. Yang Yi stretched and yawned as he prepared to go back to his room to take a nap. He casually said, I'm going to buy a car in the afternoon. Buy a car? Buy a car. Gua Zi's eyes instantly lit up and he ran over with a cheeky grin. Big Brother Yang, take me with you. I know where to buy a car. Yang Yi looked back at him strangely and said, Didn't you say you had something to do in the afternoon? It's okay, Gua Zi smiled and waved his hand. I might have read the notice wrongly. It's not this afternoon. Yang Yi chuckled. He knew it. Big Brother Yang, do you want to buy a sports car? Castrati, or Martha of England? Asked the little fat man gallantly. I don't have money to buy a sports car. Yang Yi did a rough calculation of his own pockets. The expenses for the past few days were not small. However, after Chen Yijie paid 80,000 yuan for the copyright, Yang Yi still had tens of thousands of yuan left. As for the 2 million yuan reward, it could be said that he had not used it yet. Even so, 2 million was still not enough to buy a supercar. F***CK. Yang Yi likes supercars too. In his previous life, he owned a Lamborghini Reventon. This car was limited to 20 units in the world. Of course, he could not afford it. But once, when he was on a mission, he killed his master. When he saw this car, he could not help but drive it back. Of course, the price was not small. He drove this car for a month before he was chased by the NSA. In the end, he had to give up this place and escape. Yang Yi's interest was piqued by the little fat man, but his rationality told him that now was not the time to think about this. If he wanted to buy a sports car, he had to earn 100 million yuan first. Later, he would think about how to make money legally. In the afternoon, under the lead of the local snake Little Fat Gua, Yang Yi came to the car market located at the junction of Dongqing District and Binhai District. This was the largest car market in Jiangqing. Whether it was a variety of brand 4S stores or some second-hand car middlemen, they all had a presence here. Yang Yi was curious because he had never seen all the car models and logos here before. It was completely different from his previous life. Little Fat Gua was also a car fan. Although he was a little disappointed that Yang Yi did not buy a sports car, when it came to low-priced cars, he was still able to introduce them endlessly. Within 100,000 yuan, there are more domestic cars. Things like Feaudi, Chongjiang, they are all about the same. Feaudi and Chongjiang are old brands, the quality is slightly better. Too ugly, I don't want it. Yang Yi looked at the car at the entrance and shook his head. He was indeed a person who cared about appearances. Moreover, he had seen Feaudi and Chongjiang at the car rental place. He did not like them. Between 100,000 and 200,000 yuan, there are many choices. Imported cars sell the highest. European cars are safe, but they consume a lot of fuel. Japanese cars consume less fuel, but the frame is too weak. Yang Yi listened as he walked slowly with Little Fat Gua, looking at the car models in each shop from afar. What car is this? Yang Yi suddenly stopped, pointed at a shop, and asked. Little Fat Gua took a look, scratched his head, and thought for a while before saying, This is an unpopular car. It is a civilian pickup truck brand after the military vehicle factory was restructured. It's called Wolfang. However, its car sales are not high because it doesn't suit the public's taste, and the price is on the high side. Let's go take a look. Yang Yi felt that just hearing the name Wolfang made his blood boil. Moreover, looking at the huge frame of the car from afar, it looked very much like the muscle car he liked. A disdainful laugh came from behind, attracting Yang Yi and Little Fat Gua's attention. Looking back, It was a young man with slicked back hair, dressed in a suit and leather shoes. His face was oily and powdered, just like a gigolo. Of course, looking at the brochures in his hands, Yang Yi recognized him. He was the person from the 4S car shop called Fayadi. TSK, big brother, little brother, you really know how to pick. The gigolo said jokingly, looking at you, you only have a net worth of 1 or 200,000 yuan, and you want to see Wolf Fong? Don't you know that if you don't have 400,000 yuan, you can't even touch Wolf Fong? He was also speaking according to the situation. After observing just now, he thought that Yang Yi and Little Fat, who walked past the shop, were dressed like potential customers of Fayadi, so he wanted to approach them. But before he could say anything, he heard Yang Yi's disdainful words, which made him angry. It was not that he thought that his brand was good, but he thought that Yang Yi was just a poor guy, who came out to buy a car with a worn-out luggage bag. He was even worse off than him. The gigolo boasted that he was a senior car purchasing consultant in this industry, with a monthly salary of more than 10,000 yuan. He could afford to wear a suit and leather shoes, and drink red wine and coffee. Unlike these two, who wore sandals and shorts from the street stall, they were as tasteless as they could be. But the gigolo's car was also a Fayadi. After all, he was an employee of the company and had a discount, so he could not bear to buy another car. How could a person who was worse off than him be so arrogant to say that he wanted to buy a better car than him? So, the gigolo could not help but ridicule him. Yang Yi frowned, as he could not understand what was wrong with this person. He and Guazi looked at each other, and Guazi also looked innocent, and his eyes said, I don't know this guy either. Okay, you guys go and see. After you see, don't blame me for not reminding you. The gigolo chuckled and said in a strange tone, as a person, the most important thing is to recognize your own position. Those who have enough money to buy a Fayadi shouldn't daydream so much. Yang Yi actually wanted to beat him up. In his previous life, if someone dared to ridicule him like this in front of him, he would definitely teach him a lesson. But now, he suddenly felt that it was fun. You think that we can't afford Wolf Fong? Yang Yi asked faintly. No, what kind of car is Wolf Fong? Cough, cough, I actually think that you guys can't even afford Fayadi. The gigolo sneered. Chapter 29. Author's note. Skip chapters 30 to 33 in the beginning. Why are you still complaining after reading it? Yang Yi was still very calm, but Guazi was furious. He angrily stepped forward and said, We can't afford it? Fine, come over, we'll buy it for you. Wait. Yang Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he pulled Guazi back. He still wanted to dig a hole for the other party. Guazi misunderstood. He thought that Yang Yi was embarrassed. He quickly lowered his voice and muttered to Yang Yi, Brother Yang, you don't have to worry. How much are you short of? I'll use my pocket money to buy it with you. I have to take revenge for this. I know. Yang Yi rolled his eyes and pulled Guazi to the back. The gigolo looked at the two of them with ridicule and said, Okay, don't discuss anymore. If you can afford the wolf teeth, I'll smash my car. He even flaunted the car key in his hand and squeezed it. Not far away, the lights of a compact SUV flashed. Yang Yi and Guazi couldn't help but be silent for a moment. They almost rolled their eyes. This car was too compact. Although it was called an SUV, it didn't have the length or height. If a person sat in it, with Yang Yi's height, his head would probably be rubbing against the roof of the car. If he sat in the back seat, he probably wouldn't be able to straighten his legs and would have to curl up. Of course, the appearance was okay. The design was obviously stolen from a popular foreign car model. The Arctic white color was also very generous, but it was too small. It was almost as popular as the Mini Cooper from Yang Yi's previous life. No wonder he was a gigolo. Even the things he bought were so girly. Is that what you said? Yang Yi said indifferently. When the gigolo saw Yang Yi's indifferent look, he felt a little nervous. However, the arrow was already on the bow and he had no choice but to release it. He felt that Yang Yi was trying to show off, so he said loudly, Yes, if you can afford the wolf teeth, I will smash my car. This time, they were so noisy that even the staff in the shop heard them. Isn't this Sun Ji of Fiati? What? Are you here to cause trouble? In the Wolfong store, a few men in suits came out, but they were burly and had an imposing appearance. Compared with the gigolo, the gap was obvious. At this moment, Yang Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. From the way the man walked, 2 words appeared in his mind. Soldier. Guazi seemed to have heard it. He leaned over and whispered to Yang Yi, I heard that Langya's 4S stores recruit retired soldiers. No one dares to provoke them. The gigolo smiled awkwardly and said, How would I dare to cause trouble? Aren't there a few country bumpkins who said that they want to buy your car? You're right. If I can afford the Wolfong car, you will smash your Fiati. Yang Yi said lightly. As the tallest of the 3, the people who came out of the Wolfong car store immediately noticed Yang Yi. However, after listening to Yang Yi's conversation, they realized that Yang Yi was standing on the opposite side of the gigolo Sun Ji. Suddenly, the hostility in their eyes decreased a lot. Especially the middle-aged man with a bit of a belly. He carefully looked at Yang Yi, as if he found a familiar feeling on Yang Yi. The gigolo felt like he was being roasted on a fire, but he had to fight for his dignity. For the sake of his face, he also straightened his neck and shouted, Yes, if you can afford this car, buy it on the spot. If you can afford it, I'll smash my car. Yang Yi was waiting for him to say this. He immediately cupped his hands and gestured to the people of Wolfong. Big brothers, you all heard it. If we really smash his car later, please be my witness. Haha, no problem, no problem. The middle-aged man said with a smile. President Wen, for this bet, shouldn't we give him the best discount? A thin bamboo with short hair next to him said with a smile, Why should we leave a rotten car like Fiati in this world to harm people? The gigolo jumped up excitedly and shouted, You can't collude with each other. This doesn't count. Yang Yi said lightly, There's no need for a discount. Today, I will make you accept your loss wholeheartedly. The middle-aged man who was called President Wen laughed and said, Not bad, I like this character. If you smash his car today, I will recognize you as my friend. A group of people crowded into Wolfong's shop. There were also a few people who heard the commotion and came to watch the show. Fortunately, Wolfong was backed by the military factory and was rich. The shop was also very spacious. Even if there were people watching the show, it didn't feel crowded. President Wen was in high spirits and wanted to be the car purchasing consultant himself. He took a document from his subordinate, but he didn't have the intention to open it. He just casually swiped through it. Little brother, here, this, and the third last car over there are all private cars launched by Wolfong. Take a look and see if there is one that you like. As a senior in the car industry, the gigolo had actually put in a lot of effort. He said sourly, Is there a need to be so troublesome? If a poor person wants to buy a car, can't you just pick the cheapest one for him to see? Wolfong S4, the lowest configuration is 430,000 yuan. Don't tell me you can't afford it? Yang Yi ignored him. He just looked around and found a target. Yang Yi walked towards a pickup truck with a rough frame that looked a bit like an off-road vehicle. Guazi, who was following behind, was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. Why would he take a fancy to such a car? Guazi still liked cars with softer lines. You took a fancy to this wolf legend? Xiao Zhou, throw the key over. President Wen laughed. Chapter 30. Author's note, skip 33 chapters. Why are you still complaining? Mr. Wan was not angry. He glanced at the skinny bamboo pole. The youngest guy immediately quieted down, raised his head and stood at the back. He took out a pack of soft cigarettes from his pocket, gently pinched, bowed his head and picked one up, and then gestured to Yang Yi. Yang Yi did not smoke, both in his previous life and this life. This life he lived a strict life, but in his previous life smoking would leave a special smell, which is very unfavorable for carrying out tasks. But this does not mean that he will not smoke. When necessary, such as now, Yang Yi will reach out to take one and smoke. Mr. Wen's eyes showed an appreciative expression. He patted Yang Yi's shoulder and said, "Little brother, since you like it, why don't you go up and try it? Whether it is suitable or not, you know best, right?" Yang Yi smoked with him, but not frivolously, but neither servile nor overbearing, said, "Of course." Yang Yi very casually handed over the luggage bag containing 2 million cash to Guazi. Guazi did not know what was inside, muttered and wanted to follow, but when he saw the stocky Mr. Wen get into the front passenger seat, he curled his lips and did not dare to sit in the back. Who told him to have the courage to talk back to others? Yang Yi strode with his long legs, stepped into the driver's seat. The chassis of this car is very high. The huge tires are not ordinary car tires. The lines are deep. Even if the road is bumpy, it can still maintain a high bite force. Sitting in the driver's seat, Yang Yi immediately felt different. The reason why he likes pickup truck is because he used to drive this kind of car in Africa and the Middle East, strong and crash-resistant. But those pickup trucks in his previous life are very compact. The back seat is basically not enough for people to sit. The legs of black people are very long. Even most of the people who want to hitch a ride go to the back seat to lie down. But this car is different. The front seat is very spacious, and the back seat is not much different. Mr. Wan has already comfortably leaned on the back of the front passenger seat, stretched his legs, and stretched. "Let's go, let's see your driving skills." Mr. Wan handed the key to Yang Yi. "At the beginning, you have to slow down, this car is very strong." Yang Yi did not hesitate. He inserted the key, ignited the ignition, started the car, and drove out of the 4S store. He drove steadily. But the roar of the Overlord's engine has already revealed its desire. "You can't show it here, drive to the left, there is a special test field in front." Mr. Wen pointed. When they arrived at the professional test track, Yang Yi saw the spacious and straight track. A trace of emotion flashed in his eyes. Without waiting for President Wen's instructions, he changed 2 gears. The car roared and sped off. 100 kilometers per hour, 150 kilometers per hour, 200 kilometers per hour. Mr. One did not expect the gentle Yang Yi to be so crazy. He could not take it. His face was a little pale. He hurriedly fastened his seat belt and shouted, "Slow down, slow down." But Yang Yi did not stop until he reached the fastest speed the car can go, 220 kilometers per hour. Then, at this speed, he circled the field and steadily stopped. Just now, Yang Yi directly drifted through the curve without slowing down. Mr. Wan was so scared that he almost did not have the strength to sit up. But fortunately, Mr. Wan was experienced. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and said as if nothing had happened, "Brother Yang, you are from the car industry, right?" Just now, on the way, the two of them got to know each other's names. Mr. Wen's full name is Wen Ruiz Hong. He is from the northeast. Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, "No, I am from the field forces." Mr. Wen's pupils shrank slightly, and he asked in a low voice, "Have you been on the battlefield?" Yang Yi glanced at him and nodded without ambiguity. Mr. Wen was suddenly in awe. His question was very vague. Only those who had served in the army would know what it meant. One must know, now is a time of peace. How can there be any war? Who else has been on the battlefield except for those special forces who carry out special missions? Then why? Mr. Wan was very curious, but he immediately realized that this question should not be asked. He quickly added, Sorry, this is confidential." "It's nothing," Yang Yi smiled and said, "I beat up a kid with a background, and was kicked out." Mr. Wan was stunned. He gave a thumbs up, smiled and said, "This temper, I like it." Of course, the theme was still the test. Yang Yi deliberately drove so fast. He wanted to feel the car's performance in all aspects. So far, he was very satisfied, whether it was the car's power, the shock absorption effect when passing through the ramp, the traction of the tires when drifting, or the braking speed when decelerating and braking, all can show the superior performance of this car. Of course, it can't be compared to a sports car, but it is very rare to be able to play a pickup truck to this level. As for the degree of collision resistance of the body, Yang Yi didn't care too much. Wolfang is a military car manufacturer. The materials used are not like Japanese cars and some domestic cars. Besides, he bought this car to be used in the city, not to go to the battlefield. He didn't need to consider whether it can withstand a violent impact. Back at the 4S shop, Yang Yi finally expressed his attitude. In front of everyone, he lovingly patted the front cover of Tyrannical and said, "This is it, Mr. One, please calculate, how much is it?" "Bought it." Guazi and the gigolo Sun Ji exclaimed almost at the same time. The gigolo felt even more incredulous and panicked. He said angrily, "You must have colluded when you went out to test the car. I don't believe it. How can he afford this car?" Yang Yi glanced at the gigolo and smiled faintly at Mr. One. "Mr. One, I still need to trouble you to give the car a license plate and complete the formalities. How much is it in total?" Wan Rui laughed heartily and said, "No problem, Xiao Wu, come here." He called over a young girl who worked in finance. The two of them whispered for a while, then looked up and said to Yang Yi, "The total is 610,000 yuan. I'll give you a discount, so 600,000 yuan. It seems that there is no discount, but the other people in Wolf Fong's 4S shop had a strange look on their faces. They knew that the price outside was actually the price of a low-spec car, but Yang Yi drove a top-spec car. The difference between a high-spec car and a low-spec car was more than 100,000. Wan Rui Zhong's discount is too big. I don't believe it. You colluded to lie to me. The gigolo realized that something was wrong, so he pretended to be angry and wanted to leave. However, the people in Wolf Fong would not let him go so easily, and a few people blocked his way. I don't believe that you can really take out so much money, he said resentfully. Yang Yi glanced at him, then turned around and took the luggage from Guazi's hands and put it on the front cover of the car. Under everyone's gaze, Yang Yi opened the luggage, and stacks of red banknotes were revealed. Suddenly, everyone was silent. Chapter 31. Yang Yi took out the stacks of cash and laid them flat on the hood of Tyrant's car. First, it was a 2x2 square. Then, along the right and bottom edges, it became a 3x3, and then a 4x4. He laid it out very carefully. Every stack of cash had to be aligned, and the intervals were exactly the same as the other stacks. It was as if he was fiddling with an exquisite painting. However, he didn't know how much of a shock this painting would bring to others. Not to mention the ashen face of the gigolo, Guazi, who came with Yang Yi, was so shocked that his eyeballs almost popped out. He didn't expect this big brother to be so bold. He actually stuffed over $1 million in cash in his luggage and casually brought it over. Little Fatty felt a lingering fear as he thought about it. Yang Yi had asked him to keep it safe for a while. Although $1 million wasn't much to his family, it was the first time he carried so much cash in his hands. What if someone stole it? Little Fatty felt that he was like a lamb that had been stripped of all its fur and was being eyed by a pack of hungry wolves. This scene also brought a strong visual impact to the salespeople of Wolf's Fong. After all, it was really cash. The way they looked at Yang Yi had changed. It had changed from suspicion and guessing to surprise and worship. Their mental activity must have been like this: F***ck, a nouveau riche. Seeing that Yang Yi was done, CEO Wen smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Yang, you really came to buy a car with cash?" Yang Yi smiled faintly and said, "Yeah, I had something to do a few days ago. I couldn't use the money after withdrawing it, so I might as well buy a car first to save myself the trouble of running around." His calm and collected manner made people feel that this was a real rich person. He didn't bat an eyelid, but when he took out his money, he could kill people. The onlookers couldn't help but look at the gigolo with pity in their eyes. He really had eyes but couldn't see. He could have provoked anyone, but he had to provoke an invisible rich person. Unfortunately, she liked to keep a low profile. Her sandals and shorts were from a street stall, and she looked as poor as she could get. The gigolo struggled for a bit and mumbled, "No, this might be fake money." Very quickly, several financial ladies from Langya 4S store crushed his last hope. They deftly used the counting machine to count the 60 stacks of banknotes. There was no more, no less, no mistake. It was exactly 600,000 yuan, all of which were real banknotes. But there were 4 more stacks on the hood. I really don't know if Yang Yi has other plans, or if he has some kind of obsessive-compulsive disorder. He insists on stacking a regular shape, 8 rows and 8 columns, exactly 64 stacks. There's still more. A young girl held the remaining 4 stacks and looked at Yang Yi shyly. Regardless of Yang Yi's previous image, with so much cash on hand, it was more intense than any hormone. Yang Yi smiled and didn't take it. Instead, he looked at Wen Ruiz Hong and asked, "If my car hits someone else's car, will the remaining money be enough to fix it?" Wen Ruiz Hong didn't understand why Yang Yi would ask such a question. He sincerely and confidently said, "Our tyrannical wolf is the safest car. We have never been at a disadvantage when we hit someone. It's just fixing a bumper. Why would it need 40,000 yuan?" Yang Yi signed the contract to buy the car, but the money was still held by the financial lady. The other party's face was as red as a peach, and her heart was beating wildly. She thought that Yang Yi wanted to do something with her. "Did you see that? My brother can afford a 600,000 yuan car." Guazi shook the luggage bag with more than half of the money and said to the gigolo smugly, "Now do you know your mistake? Who told you to be so talkative?" The short-haired guy curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Why are you talking so much nonsense with him? If you agree to bet, then you must accept defeat. Smash the car. Don't be afraid, we'll be your witnesses." "Do you want to smash the car?" The thin bamboo was also very excited. He rolled up the sleeves of his suit as if he wanted to go up and smash the car. "You can't do this." The gigolo was annoyed. He cried, "I'm going to call the police." "It's useless to call the police. The police here are all our brothers," the thin bamboo said with a smile, "and we have so many witnesses." At this time, Tyrannical Wolf's wild roar suddenly sounded, attracting everyone's attention. They saw Yang Yi, who had just signed the contract, once again sat in the Tyrannical Wolf. He rolled down the window and said to Wen Ruiz Hong with a smile, "Mr. Wen, I may have to trouble you to help me repair my car." Wen Ruiz Hong seemed to have thought of something. But he didn't stop him. Instead, he stepped aside with interest and directed the staff to make way for him. "Hey, Brother Yang, wait for me." When Guazi saw Yang Yi's car was about to reach the door, he was anxious. He carried his suitcase and wanted to catch up. I haven't got in the car yet." The onlookers in Langya 4's store seemed to feel that a good show was about to be staged. They followed Wen Ruiz Hong to the door. The gigolo was secretly happy. He wanted to take the opportunity to escape. But when he slipped to the door, he saw the burly Tyrannical Wolf roaring and driving in the direction of his car. He suddenly became silly. What is he going to do? Guazi carried his bag and chased to the door. Looking ahead, he couldn't close his mouth. Under the sunlight, Tyrannical Wolf emitted a silvery white glow, as though it was a snow-white ancient wolf. As it galloped and howled, it charged towards the petite Fiat and bit it ferociously. Although it was an SUV, Fiat was too small. After the Tyrannical Wolf's bumper slammed into it, Fiat was first dented. Then, the Tyrannical Wolf's huge wheel, under the powerful bite force, actually crushed it. Ka. Fiat's shell was crushed and caved in. Crash. The front windshield cracked under the pressure as well. This scene, in the eyes of the onlookers, was no less impactful than Yang Yi taking out millions of cash just now. Too much of a bully. The gigolo wanted to cry but had no tears. At this moment, he felt a deep sense of regret. Guazi was still so shocked by Yang Yi's actions that he couldn't even speak. Although he was very jumpy and rebellious, he had never thought that he would do such a violent thing. This is too. Guazi's words were snatched away by the skinny bamboo next to him. Too exciting, too manly. The skinny bamboo was so excited that he almost wanted to applaud Yang Yi. He was not alone. Those veterans in the Langya 4's store, none of them were good people. They were also stimulated by Yang Yi's violent action, trembling and boiling with passion. This brother Yang, no wonder. When Ruiz Hong was a bit more normal. He slightly shook his head with a smile, took out a cigarette, lit it, and took a big puff. As the smoke slowly came out, Wen Ruizhong seemed to see his own youth in the haze. In the smoke, the tyrannical wolf slowly drove back. Although Fiati was beyond recognition, the tyrannical wolf seemed to be fine. There were no scratches, at most, the bumper was a little dented, and some paint was chipped. Yang Yi got off the car and received everyone's attention. However, he was so calm and collected that it was as if he had just done something insignificant. President Wen, please help me fix the car. When the procedure is done, call me to pick up the car. Yang Yi handed over the car key. No problem. Wen Ruizhong smiled. At most, in 3 days, I'll return you a brand new tyrannical wolf. Then, Yang Yi went to Guazi and took the luggage bag. He took out a few stacks of red banknotes from the inside and threw them to the pretty boy like he was giving alms. The pretty boy was paralyzed on the ground. After being hit by the banknotes, he looked at Yang Yi in horror. This is for you to fix your car. When it's done, remember to fix your mouth. Yang Yi indifferently looked at him. Yes, you're a big man and don't remember my mistake. The pretty boy's face changed. One moment he was happy, the next moment he was nervous. He held the money tightly and cried bitterly. One must know that his car was really cheap. Employee price. The money Yang Yi gave him was almost enough for him to buy another one. This was really a desperate situation. Sun Ji, this be *tch, felt that he was willing to kneel down. He really did kneel down, thinking that he would be given tens of thousands of dollars again. However, Yang Yi did not pay attention to him anymore. He left with Guazi, who had a look of worship. What was left was a group of people looking at him with contempt. Chapter 32. In Harbor City, in Qianxiang's recording studio, Chan Yijie was sitting in front of the piano, playing with his eyes closed. He dressed very casually. Maybe he was influenced by Yang Yi's habits. A pair of shorts and a pair of slippers, which was completely different from his usual image when he held concerts. But perhaps, playing Long Time Not Seen required such casualness. He didn't need the audience to pay attention to his appearance. He just needed to close his eyes and listen quietly. Holding the photo you gave me, the familiar street. Chan Yijie's deep voice was intoxicating. Chan Yijie's interpretation of this song was more touching. Alas, it's a pity that this is a Mandarin song. A cool man next to him, wearing a jacket and a cowboy hat, shook his head regretfully and said to Chan Yijie, who was still thinking about it after singing. He was the music producer of Chan Yijie's new album, the deputy director of Qianxiang Music, teacher Mao Su. He himself was an excellent songwriter and composer, who had made many singers popular. It's not impossible to sing a Mandarin song. I have sung a lot of Mandarin songs before. Chen Yijie said. Mao Su touched his mustache and said with a smile, It's not that I don't like this song. On the contrary, I also think this song is very good. It's just that Eason, you have to make clear the position of your album. The songs in it are all Cantonese, but the title song is a Mandarin song. Will it cause trouble for both sides? Chen Yijie's expression became serious. He also realized this problem. Mao Su continued, If Eason's album is a Cantonese song, and you include a Mandarin song, there will be no big problem. Chen Yijie thought about it carefully, but still shook his head and said, No, choose another song as the title song. Let's give it a try. The main thing was that compared with this song, the gap between other songs was obvious. If Long Time Not Seen was placed at the back, it would be easier to steal the title. Mao Su thought of a way. He clapped his fists, and his eyes under the cowboy hat were a little excited. Well, let's find someone to help us fill in the lyrics of a Cantonese song with this song. Use the Cantonese version as the title song, and the Mandarin version as the second title song. In this way, we don't have to worry anymore. This idea was really good, and Chen Yijie also nodded. Mao Su had already begun to think about which master could help him to write the lyrics. After all, there were 4 great ghosts in Harbor City. I think I can let Yang Shang try. Chen Yijie suddenly said. Yang Shang? Is he the composer of this song, Mu Zi Ang? Mao Su asked in surprise. He even knows Cantonese? Mu Ziang is his stage name. As for the Cantonese language, Chen Yijie recalled their conversation that day. Because he had no problem communicating in Mandarin, but he was stuck in the Cantonese language during the negotiation, he simply spoke in Cantonese, and Yang Yi acted as the translator between Mandarin and Cantonese. Not only can he speak Cantonese, but he is also proficient in it. Chen Yijie smiled bitterly. Yang Shang speaks Cantonese better than many people in Harbor City. Although Mao Su was still skeptical, Chen Yijie still insisted on asking Yang Yi for help. After a phone call, Yang Yi thought for a while and said, "Okay, give me one night." Actually, Yang Yi agreed to it because the song itself was already available in Cantonese. Moreover, the level of refinement is no less than the Mandarin version. Are you kidding me? Where was Lin Shi's essay? How bad could it be? However, Yang Yi didn't intend to be too shocking, so he left a gap for one night. But this was already enough to shock the world. Chen Yijie and Mao Su didn't quite believe that Yang Yi could fill out the Cantonese lyrics in one night. But when they came over the next day, they stupidly saw an email lying quietly in the computer mailbox. Was it really the lyrics that had been filled out? Better not to see. From the rhyme of the lyrics, it was unmistakably Cantonese. But just by looking at the name of the song, Chen Yijie and Mao Su immediately felt the weight of this song. Give it a try? Mao Su was still a little skeptical. Chen Yijie was very serious. Give it a try. The lonely piano prelude opened the prelude. My head is wet. It's inevitable. Chen Yijie was worthy of being a super first-tier singer. Looking at the printed lyrics, he pondered for a while in his heart, and then sang the proper charm. Harbor City is always attached to the rain, taking the early opportunity to endure a yawn just to see you. Unexpectedly pleasant to listen to? Mao Su cheered up, as if he had received a treasure. He also seriously closed his eyes and carefully savored it. Found the dusty shop, but can't go back to the day of love. The lyrics in the front were relatively plain, but the intoxicating mellows slowly brewed in the plainness. Finally, it began to break out. The aura has probably been polluted long ago. Who doesn't change for the sake of life? Chen Yijie used a little trick here to sing the helplessness in the lyrics, as if he was sighing softly. The more I yearn to see you, then I find that there are 10 years in between. The smiling face I want to see is only nostalgia. In fact, hearing this, there was no need to experiment anymore. It was completely certain that Yang Yi had filled in the excellent Cantonese lyrics. Perhaps even the four great geniuses couldn't do a better job. But now was not the time to evaluate the lyrics. Mao Su closed his eyes and listened to the trace of melancholy, the irreversible despair, and the plain but heart-wrenching sadness. Unconsciously, tears slipped down behind the sunglasses. He, who was in his 40s and was still unmarried, thought of his first love. Although he had dated many women later, the 8 years when he was young were the most unforgettable. Yes, the smiling face I want to see is only nostalgia. Only the memory of her, smiling like a flower. Seems to have waited for 100 years. Suddenly I understand. Even if we meet again. Mature performance. So what if we meet again? The two people acted naturally to each other, pretending to be calm and asking each other how they were doing recently. So what if we meet again? She was already married and was no longer the shy girl in his arms. So what if we meet again? Increasing pain and sadness? Chen Yijie softly spat out the last sentence. Better not to meet again. Well, Teacher Mao. Teacher Mao. The singing and piano stopped, and Chen Yijie's call finally made Mao Su come back to his senses. Teacher Mao, what do you think of this song? I like it very much. Chen Yijie was very excited. He said, it should be good to be the main singer, right? Mao Su quietly wiped the tears under his sunglasses. He coughed twice and said, not bad, it's very good. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I would have thought that it was written by a native of Harbor City. But Eason, when you sang, there were a few parts that were not handled well. A mature man would always be able to hide his inner feelings very well. After teaching Eason, Mao Su went to Hu Yongxiang's office. "Ah Su, how's Eason's new album?" Hu Yongxiang had a good relationship with Mao Su. He personally poured tea for him and asked with a smile, "No problem, our basic work is ready. After recording the MV and the last 2 songs, the album will be released in July." Mao Su smiled confidently. "I can't wait to see Eason's new album sell well." "Oh, you're so confident?" Hu Yongxiang joked. "Of course, I'm not only confident in Eason, but also in the songwriter recommended by your father. Maybe we can even hit the platinum album." Mao Su said. "My father? Oh, you mean that Yong-yi?" Hu Yongxiang's memory was still good, even though he had a lot of things to take care of. "Yes. Old Hu, we may have found a treasure." Mao Su took a deep breath. "He's a genius. If it's possible, I hope that the company will pay more attention to him. Before other companies discover Yang-yi, we'll sign him with the best contract." Chapter 33. Guazi's art exam was finally here. On this day, the campus of Jiangqing Media University was as lively as a festival. Early in the morning, cars that came to deliver the exam blocked the campus. Yang Yi even gave up the idea of exercising. Guazi, on the other hand, had a big heart. He woke up very early and squatted at the school gate to observe the young ladies who were dressed up beautifully. It was only when the exam was about to start that he hurried back with his bag and rushed over. Yang Yi's coffee shop was almost done with the decorations. He had nothing to do, so he wiped the cups in the shop and wondered when he would open for business. Of course, the signboard was not ready yet. He wanted a simple wooden brand, so it was not easy to find a carpenter. He had to wait for a week to order a set. "Papa." There was a faint call from outside. It was so familiar and he missed it day and night. Yang Yi suddenly came back to his senses and quickly looked out. Outside the closed glass window, a cute little angel was excitedly waving at him. Her sweet smile and big bright eyes were all worried about Yang Yi's heart. In fact, he missed her very much. Yang Yi hurried over to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, the little girl couldn't wait to pounce on him. "Papa, she missed you so much." "Papa missed you too." Yang Yi bent down to pick up the little girl and said softly. Looking at his daughter's happy face, Yang Yi felt happiness flowing in his heart. Ahem. Murphy, who was ignored, expressed her existence with some dissatisfaction. At this time, Yang Yi's gaze fell on her body. But, didn't this woman feel hot? It was the turn of spring and summer, and she was still wearing a windbreaker, a scarf, a woolen hat, a mask, and sunglasses on her face. She looked like an Eskimo who lived in a world of ice and snow. "Aren't you hot?" Yang Yi frowned, reached out and took off her woolen hat. Murphy was caught off guard by Yang Yi's sudden concern. When Yang Yi took off her hat, she subconsciously shrank her head back. But it was too late. After the woolen hat was taken off, Murphy's wavy hair cascaded down like a waterfall, and the air was filled with a rich fragrance. "What are you doing?" Murphy's heart couldn't help but waver. However, on the surface, she still wanted to save face. She reached out and snatched the hat from Yang Yi's hand, and asked in a flustered and exasperated manner. Yang Yi carried she inside. After Murphy came in, he asked flatly, "Do you need to dress up like this to come to my place?" She knows why. The little fellow who was hugging her father's neck and refusing to let go was very active. She raised her little arms and looked at her father with a longing expression. As if to say, "Do you want to know?" Quickly asked she. Yang Yi found it funny and scratched her little nose with his finger. He said in a soft voice, "Then she will tell Daddy." Because Mom is afraid of being seen by the reporters. She giggled and said with an "I'm very powerful" look. Yang Yi suddenly understood. He thought of Chan Yi-jie who came a few days ago. Weren't these big stars also like this? Murphy took off her windbreaker and other disguises before she breathed a sigh of relief. It was really too hot just now. She said slightly angrily, "Why didn't you say that today is the day of Jiang Chuani's exam? There are so many reporters. Fortunately, there is some equipment in the car." Murphy probably didn't realize the change in her tone. Perhaps it was Yang Yi's slightly intimate action that made her loosen a little. Yang Yi frowned and looked at Murphy in puzzlement. He said, "You didn't tell me in advance, right? Moreover, today is Wednesday. How could I expect you to come?" Murphy was stunned for a moment before she remembered that she really forgot. However, during this period of time, Murphy was a little casual. She felt like she was going back to her own home. Did she have to report in advance when she was going back to her own home? So, she said a little unhappily, "Hey, do I have to apply to you before I can come?" Yang Yi was speechless for a moment. He felt that it was really troublesome to talk to women. Their logic was not on the same level at all, or they were not reasonable at all. Forget it, he simply didn't answer this question. Murphy saw that Yang Yi was playing happily with her daughter. She was a little jealous and went up to Shi. "Then," she said arrogantly, "make me a cup of coffee. I want to see if your coffee shop is qualified or not." Wasn't it easy to drink coffee? Yang Yi nodded and went to the bar to prepare for her. She was almost 4 years old, and she was taller than her peers. Murphy couldn't carry the little girl, so she held her hand and strolled around Yang Yi's coffee shop, looking at some of his furnishings and decorations. "The sofa is very comfortable. What are these bookshelves for? Why are they empty? Some of the books are ready to be displayed. When I buy them and read them, I will put them one by one. There are also some music CDs. Then what about mine? What's yours? I don't care. I only allow you to display my albums." Murphy bit her lower lip and said angrily, "How many albums do you have? Wait until I find time to listen to them, then we will talk about it." Yang Yi didn't care at all. He carried the coffee and gently placed it on the table in front of Murphy. However, in the face of the fragrant coffee, Murphy was indifferent. Instead, she stared closely at Yang Yi's eyes. Her beautiful eyes were somewhat cold. "Only my albums are allowed," Murphy said word by word. "I will ask Xiaowan to send them to you later." Yang Yi didn't buy it. He said, "That won't do. Everything displayed here has to be selected by me. Moreover, I prefer to collect some classic CDs of various types." Murphy's eyes were filled with grievance and sadness, but she still coldly pursed her lips and stared straight at Yang Yi. Yang Yi really fell for this trick. He couldn't resist Murphy's stare. He had to take a step back and helplessly said, "I will leave you a layer. I want a bookshelf." Murphy also took a step back, but she was still a little stubborn. "I can't put so many. I have a lot of singles, CDs, albums, books, and some magazine covers. And I will release a lot of songs in the future." Yang Yi helplessly waved his hand and said, Okay, you pick one yourself." Murphy's eyes flashed with joy. She pulled Shi up. She didn't even bother to drink the coffee, but pretended to be reserved and slowed down her pace. She arrogantly looked around and pointed to the bookshelf opposite Yang Yi's bar. "I want this. You are not allowed to put other people's CDs. She also wants it. She also wants it." The little girl also jumped excitedly. She thought it was something fun. She doesn't need it. Yang Yi quickly took out a few wooden frames from the box next to him and said, Shi, Dad has prepared these for you. When the time comes, Dad will frame your paintings and hang them on the surrounding walls." "Really? Then Shi will have to draw a lot of paintings." The little girl was pleasantly surprised. Murphy was a little jealous. This time, she ate her daughter. Yang Yi was so considerate for his daughter. Why didn't he take the initiative to think for her? Chapter 34. Murphy didn't stay for long. After drinking her coffee, she left in a hurry. After all, she sent Shishi here because she was about to go to Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, and other cities to participate in commercial performances. She wouldn't be able to go home for 2 weeks. She had no choice but to leave Shishi in her father's care. Yang Yi naturally couldn't ask for more. With the little girl around, the house was less lonely and more fun. However, the happy time between the father and daughter was always short. A little fatty ran back with a sad face and cried miserably downstairs, "Brother Yang, open the door for me. I'm so miserable." "Oh no, the chatterbox is back. What's wrong? You didn't do well?" Yang Yi could only go down to open the door for him. He asked puzzledly, why did the high-spirited little fatty come back with a sad face? "It's not that I didn't do well. They are prejudiced and think I'm fat and short." Guazi complained, "My mock performance and skit performance were the best. In the end, during the individual talent show, 2 of the judges said that I was too young and that it would be better to come back next year. There are such standards." Yang Yi couldn't help but frown. Guazi was a little chubby and he was not that handsome. However, Yang Yi felt that this kid was really talented. Moreover, he was still young, only 16 years old. Perhaps when he grew taller and slimmed down his body, he would be a good-looking man. One must know that every fat person had potential. Guazi sighed and said, "There's no other way. The teachers are all focused on the handsome guys and pretty girls. I'm afraid that no matter how I perform, it will be hard to catch their attention." Yang Yi was silent. Just as he was thinking about how to comfort the little fatty, Guazi made a fuss about nothing and shouted, "Ah? Why is there a little girl?" Yang Yi turned around and saw that Shi, who couldn't sit still, had run to the stairs and was looking down with her cute little head. However, she was startled by Guazi's shout, and Shi retracted her head. "She's my daughter." Yang Yi was speechless at Guazi's fuss. "You already have a daughter?" Guazi was even more surprised. "And she's already so old?" In his opinion, Yang Yi was only 27 or 28 years old. How could there be a 4 or 5-year-old child in front of him? Could it be that soldiers all got married at an early age? "Isn't it normal that I have a daughter?" Yang Yi had no intention of explaining. After going upstairs, he called the little girl over and introduced her to Shi, who was bashfully hiding behind her father's thigh. "This is Guazi, Uncle Gua. He is temporarily staying at our house. And this is my daughter, Shi. You can call her Shi." Before Shi could say hello, Guazi shouted in dissatisfaction, "What, Uncle Gua? Calling me Brother Z makes me sound old. Just call me Uncle." Yang Yi patted Shi's little head, and then glared at Guazi. "You call me Brother Yang. Is it wrong for my daughter to call you Uncle?" She was still very obedient to her father. Her voice was soft as she whispered, "Uncle Gua." Guazi's heart was crumbling at the moment, but under Yang Yi's abuse of power, he could only be an uncle with tears in his eyes. Because of Murphy's identity, she had not had much contact with strangers since she was young, so she was very shy in front of strangers. Even when her father was preparing lunch, she insisted on staying in the kitchen with him. Poor Guazi! When he saw how beautiful and cute Shi was, he even volunteered to help take care of Shi. But now, his self-esteem was hit again. "Am I really too fat and ugly? The examiner doesn't like me, and even Brother Yang's daughter doesn't like me." Guazi lay on the sofa in the living room, feeling that he was already a useless person. Fortunately, Guazi was saved by Yang Yi's sumptuous lunch. Tomato fish soup. "Dad knows that you don't eat spicy food, so I used your favorite small tomatoes. It's sweet and sour, and eating fish will make you smarter." Yang Yi introduced the dishes to his daughter one by one with a smile. Guazi listened and swallowed his saliva. "This is fried abalone mushroom with minced meat sauce. This is Beijing sauce shredded pork. This is more special. It's called steamed tofu. It's a special dish in Shandong cuisine. There's stuffing in the tofu. Stop talking, I can't help but want to eat." Guazi held the bowl and chopsticks and said with red eyes. She was originally smiling happily, but the little fatty uncle's hungry look made the little girl feel threatened. She pouted her little mouth and stretched out her little arms to stop him. She said unhappily, "No, this is what my papa made for me." "But you can't finish it," Guazi shouted. In fact, she was quite willing to share with others, but today Guazi's attitude made the little girl unhappy. She threw a tantrum and said, "I won't let you eat." Okay, it's all for Shi. Shi, try a piece of steamed tofu first." Yang Yi dotingly picked up a piece of tofu for his daughter and sat down beside her with a smile. Guazi didn't mean to be difficult with the little girl, but, seeing that Yang Yi didn't speak up for him, and the delicious food on the table seemed to be leaving him, he was so sad. Delicious. She ate the soft and tender steamed tofu and couldn't help but say to her father that it was delicious. However, she didn't forget Guazi, who was rejected by her. The little girl blinked her big eyes and looked at Guazi's sad appearance. She pulled her father's sleeve and motioned for him to lower his head. She whispered in her father's ear, "Papa, Uncle is so pitiful. How about she give it to him?" "Yes, your Uncle Gua failed the exam today and is very sad." Yang Yi smiled and whispered to his daughter, "But, there are so many delicious food, is she willing to give it to him?" Of course, Yang Yi didn't know right from wrong and wouldn't condone Shi's tantrum. However, perhaps because of his tragic childhood in his previous life, he didn't know how to reason with children, so it seemed that his way of teaching was quite special. However, what made Yang Yi happy was that his daughter was too kind. Her tantrum only lasted for a while, but now, she was worried about Guazi. "Uncle is not happy? Then, share some with Shi. Shi can't eat so much." The little girl whispered in her father's ear. "Then, tell him that I'm sorry, Uncle Gua. Let's eat together." Yang Yi encouraged her. Shi was a little nervous, but she still plucked up her courage and said, "Uncle Gua, don't be sad. Let's eat together." The little angel's voice was very pleasant to listen to. When it reached Guazi's ears, it was like the sound of nature. "Thank you, Shi." Being able to enjoy delicious food, Guazi threw away all the grievances in his stomach. He smiled happily at Shi and couldn't wait to start eating. Oh! The fish slices are delicious, the tofu is delicious, and the shredded pork with soy sauce is even more delicious. Guazi used a spoon to scoop up a large spoonful of shredded pork with soy sauce, mixed the sauce with rice, and wolfed it down. Looking at the way the little fatty uncle ate, Shi also had a great appetite. Chapter 35. Papa, Shi wants to listen to a story. At night, Yang Yi remembered Murphy's request and coaxed the little girl to sleep at around 9 o'clock. But perhaps because she was with her father, Shi was very excited all day. Now she was wearing a small nightgown and barefoot, stepping on her father's big bed. "Well, Papa will tell you a new fairy tale." Yang Yi sat on the bed and said with a smile, "But Shi, you have to lie down and be obedient." "Yes. She will be obedient." She nodded happily and quickly got into bed. Then she held the teddy bear she brought from home and looked at her father eagerly. Yang Yi sorted out his thoughts and began to say, "Long, long ago, there was a beautiful princess. Her skin was as white as snow, and everyone called her Snow White." Yes, Yang Yi was going to tell the story of Snow White. However, this story was not as easy to tell as Frozen, because Yang Yi had never read this story in his previous life. His childhood was only filled with killing, and there were no fairy tales. Therefore, he could only make up his own story based on the general direction of the plot that he learned from various places in his memory. It seemed that the effect was good. She was fascinated by the story, and she seemed to have integrated herself into the role. When the little girl heard that Snow White's mother had passed away, her small eyes showed sadness. When she heard that Snow White's stepmother didn't like Snow White, she was also very frightened and nervous. Magic mirror, who is the most beautiful person in the world?" Yang Yi pretended to be the queen and raised his hands in front of him as if there was a mirror in front of him. Because Snow White grew up, her skin was as white as snow and she was as beautiful as a holy angel. So the magic mirror replied, "My queen, you are the most beautiful here, but Snow White is 1,000 times more beautiful than you." She didn't realize the problem yet. Her big eyes showed a happy smile, and she was proud of Snow White's beauty. The queen was shocked, and her face became distorted because of jealousy. She couldn't tolerate others being more beautiful than her. Yang Yi said softly, "So, the queen ordered a soldier to take Snow White to a distant forest and kill her." The original version of the story should be about a hunter, but Yang Yi didn't know these details. No, she doesn't want Snow White to die. The little girl took her father's hand and said in a panic, "Silly, how could Snow White die?" Yang Yi comforted his daughter and smiled. Snow White was so cute and so beautiful, so's that soldier couldn't bear to kill her, so he let her go, and then he killed a pigs, and then told the queen to see. She breathed a sigh of relief. Under the tension, the little girl's spirit was a little tired. The story was still very long. Slowly, Yang Yi said that Snow White, who died after eating a poisonous apple, was rescued by a prince riding a white horse. She's nervous expression relaxed, and she finally couldn't help but close her eyes and fall asleep. Yang Yi looked at his daughter for a while, then he smiled, tucked Shi in and quietly went out. Outside, Guazi was moaning and groaning on the balcony. Today's weather was a little gloomy, and the moon couldn't be seen. The dark sky made it even more depressing and difficult to sleep. Yang Yi came over and sat next to Guazi, thinking about what to say. The little fatty opened his mouth first. "Brother Yang, I want to drink." Yang Yi looked at the dispirited little fatty, and he nodded silently. He went back to the kitchen and mixed a large plate of sweet and sour peanuts, and then pulled out a dozen beers from the fridge. Yang Yi didn't plan to drink the beers he bought. He wasn't addicted to alcohol, and even if he wanted to drink, he would drink red wine. These beers were only used to cook dishes, such as beer braised duck, beer braised eggs, and so on. They were all very delicious. He didn't expect that it would come in handy now. "Come, I'll drink with you." Yang Yi opened 2 cans of beer, handed one over, and clinked it with the little fatty. He smiled and said, "Men, what's there that can't be overcome?" In this world, minors weren't allowed to drink, right? But there weren't as strict regulations as in other countries, and in Yang Yi's world, there weren't so many taboos. "Thank you, Brother Yang," the little fatty said in a low voice. He was so depressed today that he even became a little quiet. After gulping down a big mouthful, he finally opened his mouth. "Big Brother Yang, I've really lost a lot of face this time. Before I came, I even told my teachers and classmates that if I didn't pass the arts exam, I wouldn't go back." At that time, how high-spirited was Guazi? A genius like him, he didn't need to work hard, and his grades were still the best in school. A genius like him, he was younger than others by 2 or 3 years, but he was still able to receive a lot of attention from his older brothers and sisters. He even played the guitar and sang at the New Year's party, which stirred up the hearts of many girls. A genius like him, after he made up his mind to enter Jiang Chuan's performing arts department, he ignored the teacher's objections and threw himself into the performing arts course without hesitation. Even though he started late, in half a year, he made the other students in the tutoring class feel ashamed of their inferiority. He thought that he was invincible, so he boasted in high spirits, but now, he suffered a heavy blow from reality. After drinking 2 cans of beer and talking a lot, Guazi finally vented some of the depression in his heart, but Yang Yi didn't comfort him. He just listened and drank with him. "Brother Yang, I want to sing your song, Once You." The little fatty said. Yang Yi nodded. He taught this song to Guazi that night, but Guazi didn't plan to use it for the exam. This guy was a little arrogant, and wanted to use his own ability to conquer the examiners. Of course, the result was quite tragic. "Once I dreamed of walking the world with a sword, to see the prosperity of the world." Guazi took the guitar, plucked the strings, and began to sing. Yang Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He didn't know if the little fatty was drunk, or if he had experienced some setbacks, but his singing today was unexpectedly good. Diddly-da-da-da. The kid actually started to wail and howl towards the end of the song. Yong-yi interrupted him unhappily. Okay, stop singing. You're going to wake Shi up. The little fatty laughed and put down the guitar. He took a big gulp of beer, and then quietly finished singing the last few lines in a low voice. Let's drink this cup of beer. A good man's heart is like the sea, experiencing the coldness and warmth of the world. This smile is warm and pure. The two drank, drowning their sorrows. Until the little fatty was a little drunk, Yong-yi slowly said, "Do you still want to be an actor?" The little fatty nodded without hesitation. Yes. Then why do you need to care about what others think? Yong-yi said lightly. Do you need to brood over one failure? I'm not brood over it, I just feel ashamed to go back and face people, the little fatty said faintly. Then bring this shame, kill your way back, and use the results to tell them, what you did back then was wrong. Let them feel ashamed of their ignorance. Yong-yi said. In his previous life, there were a lot of people who looked down on him. Especially the group of white and black people who always called him a yellow monkey. But in the end, these people who were lucky enough to survive the training camp did not escape from his pursuit. Guozi opened his mouth wide and looked at Yong-yi in a daze. Don't tell me that after being hit once, you can't recover. Yong-yi laughed and looked very disdainful. Don't make me look down on you. How is that possible? The little fatty jumped up excitedly. Not sure if it was because of shame or because of the alcohol, his face and ears were red. He patted his chest and said, Brother Yong, just you wait. I'll kill my way back. I'll let those people who looked down on me regret the humiliation they gave me today. Chapter 36. The next day, the frustrated fatty Guo went home. Before he went home, he confidently said something that only villains would say at the gate of Jiangchuan School, I'll be back. It's not easy to come back. You just live in the coastal area. Yong-yi said, ruining the atmosphere. The cool brother Yang wasn't as sentimental as Fatty Guo. He was just going to take Shi out to play, so he gave Fatty Guo a ride. Since Tyrant was also back, he could drive a little further to get used to the car. After seeing Chubby Guo off, Yang-yi drove his daughter to the shopping mall. Hai Hong Shopping Mall, which specialized in children's products and had high-quality imported products, was also in the coastal area. This was what Mo Fei told him. Papa, where are we going to play? Shi asked curiously. The little girl sat obediently on the child's seat in the back seat. Shi finally didn't wear a skirt today. Yang-yi gave her a white chiffon short-sleeved shirt and blue cotton linen shorts. At first, she didn't like it. Later, when she looked in the mirror and saw the fresh and pretty little girl, she felt that she was beautiful and didn't dare to admit it. I'll buy you clothes, milk powder, and toys. Yang-yi smiled. This time, Shi was going to stay at home for 2 weeks, so the things that Murphy brought over weren't enough. Not to mention milk powder, which was a daily necessity for Shi, Murphy was careless and forgot to bring it over. Even though Murphy stuffed a suitcase full of clothes and toys, how could it be enough? Wearing the same skirt all day long would also decrease the novelty. Moreover, Yang-yi felt that Murphy's taste was quite average. She only wore skirts and skirts, so it was necessary for the little girl to change her style. Really? Papa is going to take Shi shopping? Shi's big eyes sparkled as she cheered in surprise. The Hai Hong Shopping Mall was indeed a children's specialty store. The entire shopping mall was decorated in a childish manner. There were cartoon posters, pink-toned stairs, and even a huge bubble ball playground in the plaza on the first floor, which stimulated many children to pester their parents to go in and play. Shi also wanted to play. However, the temptation of buying clothes was even greater. Soon, she could not help but break free from her father's embrace. She ran ahead happily and called out to her father, Papa, look at this is so beautiful. Yang-yi looked up. Alright, why are we at a dress shop again? She took a fancy to a pure white pleated gauze dress. It was sleeveless and had a blue-purple floral belt around the waist. It looked a bit like the dress worn by priestesses in the Olympic ceremony of collecting fire seeds. It was holy and clean. "The little girl is so cute. You have a good eye." Seeing this, a saleswoman in the store immediately came up to her with a flattering smile. "This dress suits you the best. Do you want to try it on?" She was a little shy. She ran back to her father and took his hand. "Sir, come in and have a look." The saleswoman immediately changed her target and said to Yang Yi with a smile, "Your daughter is very tall. This dress is very suitable for her. Moreover, we are holding an event today. All the clothes are 20% off. If you don't think this dress is suitable, we have others." Yang Yi looked down at Shi. Although the little girl was shy, her small eyes were still looking at the dress expectantly. Yang Yi smiled and said, "Then let's go in and try it on." More than 20 minutes later, Yang Yi and Shi came out with bags. The shop assistants behind them were smiling brightly. They were even happier than Shi, who had bought the dress she liked. Shopping with Shi, for the first time, Yang Yi experienced the craziness of girls shopping. She could find clothes she liked in almost every store, and then she wanted to go in every store to have a look. In the end, she almost dragged her father to shop. It was thanks to Yang Yi's steel-like physique that he was able to accompany the little fellow to shop floor after floor. It was also thanks to Yang Yi, who was willing to spend money on his daughter, that he was able to support her to shop round after round. Princess dresses, t-shirts, suspenders, jeans, shorts, miniskirts, suspenders, sweatpants, and all kinds of cute cartoon tops and suits. Not to mention all kinds of hats and accessories. Buying a lot of favorite clothes, she felt that she was bursting with happiness. In the middle, Yang Yi couldn't carry so many bags, so he went to the parking lot twice to deliver them. Almost all the shops passing by looked at them with shining eyes. In the end, the little girl couldn't bear it anymore and stopped shopping crazily. Even so, Shi, who was sitting on her father's neck tiredly, still wanted to continue. She said to her father in a spoiled manner, "Papa, let's buy clothes tomorrow, okay?" Yang Yi shivered. He coughed and said, "Not tomorrow. Tomorrow, I will take you to the amusement park." She thought for a moment and nodded with satisfaction. Then she will go to the amusement park and wear the most beautiful clothes. But which one is the most beautiful? It's so hard to choose. The little guy was still very excited and started talking to himself. However, Yang Yi still had to buy things, so he let the little girl sit on his neck. He went to the milk powder shop and bought the milk powder that she often drank, as well as some fish liver oil and vitamin supplements that Murphy asked him to buy in the text message. "In fact, you don't have to buy these. When I was a child, my family was poor. I grew up eating sweet potatoes, and I didn't look bad." Yang Yi sighed with emotion as he bought the things. "I don't like to eat them." She pouted and said, "I like to eat Papa's dishes. These are not delicious." However, Yang Yi still had to buy them. Murphy warned him on the phone that if he didn't buy them, she wouldn't let Shi play with her father next time. After buying these, it was already night. Yang Yi was ready to go home, but he happened to pass by a bookstore, which sold books related to children. Yang Yi's heart moved. He carried the bags and carried Shi, who was sleeping on her father's shoulder, into the bookstore. "Sir, what do you need?" "I can help you." A shop assistant greeted him. She saw that Yang Yi was inconvenient now, so she took the initiative to lift a shopping box and help Yang Yi take the books. "I want to buy some children's storybooks, fairy tales, and some books that teach parents how to take care and educate children," Yang Yi whispered to her. With the help of the shop assistant, Yang Yi began to buy crazily again. 100 children's fairy tales, a selection of foreign fairy tales, baby's pillow storybook, parenting knowledge, a good mother is better than a good teacher, how to make children listen, loving children is talking well. There were more than 20 heavy books. In the end, 2 shop assistants helped him to carry them to the parking lot. The books Yang Yi bought were enough for him to study and become an expert in educating children. Anyway, Shishi had to live with her father, so Yang Yi also had to shoulder the responsibility and learn how to be a good father seriously. Chapter 37. The prince used his love to wake up Snow White, who had mistakenly eaten the poisoned apple. He told the 7 dwarfs that he wanted to take Snow White as his wife, and the 7 dwarfs were invited to attend their wedding. They sang and danced, celebrating the prince and Snow White's happy life together. But one day, the bad queen asked the magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror, who is the most beautiful woman in the world?" The magic mirror said, "You are the most beautiful woman in this room, but in the kingdom on the other side of the forest, Snow White, who had just gotten married, is 1,000 times more beautiful than you." The bad queen was furious. She rode a flying broom and wanted to go to the kingdom next door to deal with Snow White. But she had done too many bad things. When she was flying over the forest, a lightning struck and killed her. Yang Yi still used the story that he didn't finish yesterday to coax Shishi to sleep. The ending was very good. Shishi was also happy for Snow White, but the little girl didn't smile. She thought of herself. "I don't like Snow White's stepmother. She is bad." Although Shishi was very tired, she still hugged the little bear tightly and said to her father, "Papa, don't be separated from Mom, okay? She is scared." Mentioning this issue again, Yang Yi secretly sighed. He said softly to Shishi, "Shishi, don't be afraid. No matter what, Papa will protect you. No matter who it is, Papa won't let anyone hurt you." Yang Yi said firmly. Shishi pursed her lips and put down the little bear. She stretched out her little hand and said, "Papa, I want you to hug me." Yang Yi's heart softened. He quickly lifted the quilt and got on the bed, hugging the little girl in his arms. In her father's arms, Cece seemed to feel at ease as she hugged her father's big hand. Her breathing gradually stabilized and she fell into a deep sleep. She was too tired from shopping today. After all, she was still a little girl who was not even 4 years old. Yang Yi waited for Shishi to fall asleep before he took her teddy bear and slowly replaced his hand with it. Then, he picked up the little girl and put her back to sleep. Just as Yang Yi released his hand and was about to cover her with the blanket, the little girl squirmed and Yang Yi stopped. Shishi withdrew her hands and hugged the teddy bear tightly. Her long eyelashes clung tightly to her face, and she muttered vaguely, "Papa, Shishi doesn't want a stepmother, I don't want." For some reason, Yang Yi felt a little sour in his heart. This was a feeling he had never experienced in his previous life. "No way, no way." Yang Yi lowered his head and gently kissed his daughter's forehead. He said softly, "Shishi, don't be afraid." As if she had heard her father's words in her dream, the little girl gradually relaxed and frowned. After coaxing Shishi to sleep, Yang Yi closed the door and went to the study. A few days ago, he bought a computer and installed the internet in the study. The computer system in this world was relatively ordinary, and the logic was a little inhuman. Yang Yi felt that it was not as good as the Windows system in his previous life, which was full of bugs, let alone his favorite Apple system. However, he did not know how to design complicated programs, so it was impossible for him to create the computer system in his previous life. Even if he preferred to work with the Apple desktop, he could only learn to adapt. He opened the computer and found a folder. The folder was called Soldier's Assault. Yes, he had been writing this novel in the past few days. Thanks to his clear memory of all his experiences in his previous life, Yang Yi almost looked at his memory and typed out this novel, which was based on the drama Erna's Assault. His efficiency was surprisingly high. Out of the 400,000-word novel, there were already more than 100,000 words in his computer. This was the result of him only typing for 1 or 2 hours every day. It could be said that Yang Yi could finish the novel in less than a week. Speaking of which, why did Yang Yi want to carry this novel? Ever since he came into contact with Mo Fei, Yang Yi had always felt a strong sense of crisis. This woman knew too much about his past. Murphy knew exactly what kind of person Yang Yi was and what kind of financial situation he had. Therefore, after Yang Yi's personality changed, Yang Yi could feel Murphy's suspicion. However, this was still okay. After Yang Yi argued with her a few times, whether it was intentional or not, Murphy's suspicion had been dispelled. Yang Yi, this stubborn guy, wasn't his temper still the same as before? However, the biggest flaw now was Yang Yi's wealth. Renting this small building was still okay. With Old Master Hu's lease contract, it was not like Yang Yi could not fork out 1 yuan. However, Yang Yi had also bought a car, a big car worth 600,000 yuan. Murphy did not see this when she came yesterday, but she would find out one day. In addition, Yang Yi had bought so many clothes for Shi today. The clothes he bought at Hai Hong Mall were not cheap. Basically, they were all worth at least 1,000 yuan. Unless Yang Yi did not let Shi wear them and hid them, Murphy would definitely notice that something was wrong. The coffee shop had not even opened yet. Where did Yang Yi get such a huge sum of money? However, why would Yang Yi do this? Hiding the money and not enjoying it while it lasted was not his style. Moreover, he dared to buy clothes for Shi and swagger in and out in Tyrant because he had already thought of an escape route. This escape route was to use some of the literary and musical works from his previous life to earn copyright fees in this world. The awareness of copyright protection in this world was very high, and it also led to the development of the cultural industry. However, Yang Yi still had strong confidence in the excellent works he had seen in his previous life. Did the 2 songs, Long Time No See and Better Not See, not receive the favor of Hong Kong singer Chen Yijie and the deputy director of Tianxiang Music? It also brought 160,000 yuan to Yang Yi, plus a huge profit from future dividends. However, Yang Yi did not intend to reveal this part of the profit too early. After all, Murphy knew that his predecessor did not like music. At least he needed some buffer time. Then, with Yang Yi's past identity and experience, it was perfect to write a military novel. When he thought of military novels, Yang Yi's first thought was drawing sword. However, this popular novel in his previous life revealed a history that was not quite the same as this world. Even if Yang Yi wanted to write it, he would need to carefully study the history of this world before going back and carefully adapting it. In addition to drawing sword, Yang Yi's first choice was the popular TV series in his previous life, followed by the popular novel adaptation, Soldier's Assault. P.S. Little Han has checked. Soldier's Assault should be the novel Soldiers before the TV series. However, the original novel seems to be very difficult to find. Moreover, Little Han is more inclined towards the TV series plot of Soldier's Assault. So, for the time being, treat the adapted TV series as the original novel. In his previous life, Yang Yi did not have strong feelings for the military. He even read this novel to pass the time when he was lonely. However, in this life, when he wrote this novel word by word, Yang Yi's heartstrings were pulled. This story was too similar to the experience of his predecessor. Although his predecessor was not as cowardly as Su Sanduo, he was just as naive, just as silly, and just as dull. He also came from the countryside. He also grew from a useless soldier who knew nothing and was ridiculed by his teammates to an elite soldier who received so much honor that his hands went limp. Therefore, Yang Yi felt that writing this novel was also a virtual story that included his memories of the military camp. Yang Yi came back to his senses. He opened the web page and registered an author's account with his real name on the largest literature website in the country. It was a website established by copyright organizations. Su Sanduo's journey begins now. Chapter 38. The literature websites in this world were different from the ones in Yang Yi's previous world. Before authors uploaded their works to a certain website, they had to click on the confirmation button and sign an agency agreement with the website. This virtually eliminated the need to sign a contract and send it out. Then, after the author uploaded the chapters, the website had a tailor-made review program by the Copyright Association to identify them. It was said that it was supported by the calculation of a supercomputer. The Copyright Association was rich and powerful, so in a few seconds, It could analyze whether the chapters were plagiarized or not. Not only would there be such a review during the upload of a new book, but the anti-piracy, anti-plagiarism, and anti-infringement work actually ran through the entire release period of the novel. This really made the original author feel at ease. As for the editors of the website, they didn't need to repeatedly identify them. They just needed to pick out the excellent original works from the vast sea of books and then place them on the website. Although their work seemed simple, just reading non-stop, in fact, it was far more important than people imagined. After all, in a world where reading books required money, although the price was very, very low, there were no free chapters. Furthermore, there were a large number of works being added to the website at every moment. Without the editor's recommendations and the support of previous experience, it was likely that many excellent works of newcomers would be buried in the huge library of works. Chongzi was a member of the huge editorial team of the Reading Literature website. He liked reading since he was a child, and he read a wide range of books. He liked all kinds of books. Plus, he was a homebody and wasn't used to communicating with strangers. This job where he could read books for free became his happiest choice. He was on the night shift this week. After handing over to his colleagues, Chongzi went to the pantry and made himself a cup of strong black tea. Then, he sat comfortably on his chair, opened the computer screen, and began to browse the new books that the system assigned to him. The writing of this book is terrible. The sentences can't be written smoothly. How can he have the nerve to upload his work? Sometimes, Chongzi was also sharp-tongued, but that was only his private whispers. According to the requirements of his job, he opened a private document and copied a comment that he had written earlier for the author, advising him to think about his words and sentences. This book doesn't have any mistakes or misuse of words, but the plot is very messy, and I don't know where the logic went. This book is not bad. It's just that the plot is a little dry. It needs to be more developed. It might not be impossible for it to become a passable work in the future. After looking at more than 10 newcomer works, Chongzi was a little disappointed. There was no work that made his eyes light up. However, this was also very normal. In this era of national creation, there were a lot of low-quality works mixed in. If one wanted to find gold in the sand, they had to be more patient. The tea in the teacup was finished. Chongzi was about to get up and make another cup, but the next novel he clicked on attracted his attention. A wedge. An ant is walking on an ant path marked by secretions from its abdominal glands. This thing is as important to it as an iron cabinet is to a locomotive. What an interesting analogy. The first sentence of the novel made Chongzi unable to help but sit back down. He scrolled the mouse wheel and continued reading. But our ant is a soldier ant, a brown species. Regardless of color, soldier ants are like soldiers in the First World War in my imagination. They spend their lives in a stuffy tank car that doesn't see the light of day, moving on a track that is said to be safe but is actually full of danger. Once the door opens to see the light of day, the first few paragraphs of text were plain but shocking. Chongzi couldn't help but click on the home page with the mouse to look at the title and introduction of the book. Soldier's Assault. This is a military novel? Chongzi couldn't help but feel a little excited. He liked this kind of military novel that made people's blood boil. Introduction. Shining spears and armored horses, men with fighting spirit, the spiritual world of soldiers is rich and cold. An ordinary rural child with character flaws, he is simple and persistent, tumbling and rolling in the world of soldiers. Because of his stupidity, the whole company is implicated. Because of his seriousness, the whole company is moved. Because of his persistence, the whole battalion is proud of him. Although his ancestral home in his hometown was turned into a pile of rubble in the explosion, it couldn't stop his firm steps as a soldier. Kindness and compassion didn't make him forget his duty as a soldier. Shooting drug offenders. He was tempered into steel in all kinds of difficulties and hardships. His name is Su Sanduo. Wait, looking at this introduction, Chongzi had a strong sense of reality impact. Could it be that this was a documentary novel? Chongzi couldn't help but hesitate. One had to know that even though this novel was published in the military column, this military column was compiled under the web literature. Whether it was Yang Yi's previous life or the online literature of this life, they were very different from traditional literature. Traditional literature was based on reality and deeply exposed the problems in reality, while online literature was either based on reality and higher than reality, or purely inserted the wings of fantasy and unconstrained. Let's take a look at the military section below the web novel. It was either time travel or rebirth, with memories to change the history of the original failed war. Or the protagonist had a special ability, step by step going against the heavens and becoming a soldier king. Would such a novel with a somewhat realistic content be welcomed by readers? If it was another novel, Chongzi might have wanted to suggest the author to publish it in another column. But for this book, after reading a few chapters, Chongzi actually felt a little reluctant. The author's writing was very delicate. Just like how the chapter Wedge wrote about soldier ants, but Chongzi didn't superficially think that this book was about ants. Between the lines, there was a solemn and stirring aura of a soldier. The smell of steel, the smell of smoke, the smell of gasoline, the smell of unnatural fabric. The smell of the devil and the end of the world. The soldier ants are crying. No, soldier ants don't cry. Using soldier ants to describe the iron blood of soldiers, could a military novel be written with such a literary style? Chongzi felt that the softness in his heart had been touched. The author of the new book was very impressive, updating nearly 50,000 words in one breath, but the broken chapter was a bit of a pain in the ass. Wedge was less than 2,000 words, the first chapter was more than 5,000 words, the second chapter soared to more than 20,000 words, and the third chapter shrank to less than 20,000 words. Did he break a chapter? Or did he just casually write a chapter number in a paragraph for fun? But even so, Chongzi was mesmerized by Su Sanduo. He was deeply attracted by this simple and honest coward. He really wanted to know how this Su Sanduo had become the pride of the entire company as described in the introduction. However, the story came to an abrupt end, and the author updated to the third chapter. It didn't matter. Chongzi had already decided that he would add this special novel to the list of recommendations that would be pushed by the editor tomorrow. One had to know that this was the best recommendation spot that a newcomer's work could get. An editor could only push one novel a day, and even if it was just a text recommendation, the novel would still appear on the website's homepage. It could be seen how much Chongzi liked this novel. The meaning is profound, depressing, but full of hope. I have a hunch that this will be a masterpiece. Chongzi excitedly added a link to the book on his blog and commented below. Chapter 39. Author's note: this chapter is not meant to ridicule those who are forced to go on blind dates by their parents, nor does it have any ill intentions towards the girls. Xiaohan is on the side of free love. Moreover, Xiaohan believes that even if a girl reaches the age where she should be anxious, she should not be anxious. She would rather be slow until she finds someone who truly loves her. No matter what, she should not compromise. Yang Yi had never been a web novelist in his previous life, and he did not care about the results of his novels. After uploading a few chapters, he saved them in the draft box for a few days. After setting the timer, he closed the web page and did not care about it anymore. As for the short recommendation spot that editor Chongzi sent him, it was pitifully left in the author's back-end inbox. It was another early morning. The sky was still green, and a thin mist shrouded the campus. Yang Yi still got up early to exercise and crossed Ting Mountain to buy fresh ingredients for Shi. The largest vegetable market in Ting Mountain was located at the western foot of Ting Mountain. It was the largest residential area in Ting Mountain, and it was close to a pier of the Jinghang Grand Canal. Whether it was agricultural products, seafood, birds, beasts, or even some precious high-quality ingredients, they could all be bought in this market. After all, there was also a villa area here, where the rich and powerful lived. If he went through the main gate of the school, he would have to walk a long way around the foot of the mountain. As long as he crossed Ting Mountain, the vegetable market would be on the opposite side. However, the shortcut required a lot of physical strength on the rugged mountain road. Yang Yi did not lack physical strength. The energy consumption from crossing the mountain was just enough to force his internal strength to circulate and accelerate the speed of his cultivation. "Little Yang, you're here again." The aunties selling vegetables in the second row of the market had already recognized the young man who came every day. They smiled and greeted him. "I picked some bamboo shoots today. Do you want some?" Yang-yi was very picky about food. He had walked through many stalls, and only this one sold vegetables of the highest quality. The aunties said that the vegetables were all grown in the mountains contracted by the family, and there were no fertilizers or pesticides. "Then I'll try some." Yang-yi smiled, picked a tender bamboo shoot, and put it in the bag handed over by the aunties. These people who sold vegetables liked to chat. Yang-yi didn't want to appear too arrogant, so he agreed. After a few times, Yang-yi got used to the feeling of greeting people. His personality was also unknowingly influenced and became more easygoing. While Yang-yi was picking the mushrooms and lettuce, the granny who sold eggs and duck eggs came over and looked at Yang-yi with burning eyes. Her gaze swept from Yang-yi's head to his feet, then back to Yang-yi's face. Yang-yi sensed it and raised his head in confusion. "Little Yang, where do you work?" Big Ant was pushed by the old lady and asked helplessly. I started my own business and opened a coffee shop in Jiangchuan." Yang-yi didn't know why, so he had to answer honestly. Unexpectedly, Yang-yi's answer made the old lady very satisfied. She grinned and said, "Starting a business is good, you can make money." "I told you, little Yang's family background is good." Big Ant smiled. "So it's in Jiangchuan, that's even more suitable." "Yes, yes." The old lady smiled from ear to ear. "Then little Yang, how old are you this year?" Yang-yi had never seen this kind of attitude before, so he was a bit confused. Why did she ask so many questions? But because of the favor, Yang-yi couldn't keep quiet. He said awkwardly, 31 years old. The old lady's somewhat cloudy eyes were shining at this moment. She smiled and said, 31 years old is good, 31 years old is not bad. What's so good about 31 years old? Yang-yi was dumbfounded. 31 years old is not old, just 1 or 2 years old. And look at little Yang, he exercises every day, his body is so good. Big Ant continued to recommend, and little Yang is definitely someone who loves his wife. He buys groceries and cooks every day. I'm afraid Yen doesn't have to worry about housework at home. Yes, yes. Big Ant was so happy that she couldn't close her mouth. Wait, something's wrong? No matter how slow Yang-yi was, he noticed it. But before Yang-yi could say anything, under the old lady's urging, Big Ant smiled and said to Yang-yi, "Little Yang, Auntie will introduce you to someone, okay?" Huh? Yang-yi was dumbfounded. Your Grandma Wu's granddaughter also works in Jiangchuan as a counselor, right? Big Ant saw the old lady nod and smiled. I was too busy with work before, so I didn't have time to talk to someone. Now my family is very anxious, so you two are close, so you can talk more. Auntie is not bragging, but their Yen is as beautiful as a flower, and she's a local, and she has a house. Big Ant continued to recommend. Wait. Yang-yi said with a bitter smile. Auntie, Grandma Wu, you misunderstood. I'm already married. Suddenly, there was silence. Big Ant and Big Ant looked at each other, and the atmosphere was a little awkward. Big Ant looked at Big Ant with some resentment, as if to say, "Didn't you say you're not married?" "Yes, I'm not married." She had observed Yang-yi for many days, and he didn't have a wedding ring on his hand. She also didn't see him bring that girl to go grocery shopping. He had been alone all this time. Big Ant said with some dissatisfaction, "Little Yang, don't lie to Auntie. Don't tell me you think Yen is old. She's not even 30. 28, 29, still far from 30. Big Ant said unhappily. Yang-yi had no choice but to take out his phone, flip through the photo album, and show it to them. "This is my daughter, I'm not lying to you." Yang-yi almost never took photos, a habit from his previous life. But yesterday, Murphy missed her daughter and insisted that Yang-yi take a photo and send it to her, so Yang-yi took a photo of she. He didn't expect it to come in handy today. Oh. The auntie and granny looked at the photo and sighed regretfully. Then, Their attention was attracted by the cute little girl in the photo. Wow, Xiaoyang, your daughter is so beautiful. She looks just like you. After Yang Yi took the phone, he said proudly, of course, she's my biological daughter. The topic of she alleviated the awkwardness of Big Aunt and Big Aunt. They were still very talkative and chatted with Yang Yi, asking Yang Yi what he usually gave she to eat. Their daughter was so white and tall. Yang Yi felt quite awkward. It was the first time he was introduced to someone. He answered a few words perfunctorily, then quickly ran away with the excuse that he had to go home to take care of his daughter. Behind him, Yang Yi, with his sensitive ears, heard Big Aunt complaining impatiently, seriously, you said you're not married, and you're introducing my Yan to someone who already has a child. Yang Yi wanted to cry but had no tears. He felt a little embarrassed to go to this stall to buy groceries in the future. When he got home, she still hadn't woken up. Yang Yi took a shower, changed into dry clothes, and then went to wake the little girl up. Boo-hoo, I don't want to get up. Boo-hoo, I don't want Papa to hug me. I hate it. Shi's hair was fluffy, and she couldn't open her eyes and made a fuss in her father's arms. She was going to be angry for a while after waking up. Yang Yi kissed his daughter's tender little face and said, okay, Dad will take you to wash your face. It's time to get up and eat breakfast. He laughed secretly in his heart. You said you don't want Dad to hug you. You don't know that you almost lost your dad just now. It was terrible. There were people who introduced people to each other after meeting a few times. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.